Olivia Watson, a vibrant 29-year-old, was a woman driven by her insatiable wanderlust. Hailing from the constraining conservative town of Bentonville, Arkansas, known only for being the headquarters of Walmart, she defied the confines of her small-town origins, embracing a life of adventure and exploration. As one of the pioneers in the world of travel blogging, Olivia's name resonated across the internet, inspiring others to follow in her footsteps. Despite her humble beginnings, Olivia possessed an indomitable spirit and an unwavering love for the unknown. Her passion for travel was matched only by her deep-rooted compassion for others. Whether it was lending a helping hand to a fellow traveler or championing a charitable cause, Olivia's altruism knew no bounds. In the summer of 2004, Olivia's star was on the rise. She was on the cusp of literary success, with her debut novel, The Hungry Ghosts, poised to captivate readers worldwide. The book, a poignant tale blending Chinese folklore with the story of the disintegration of famous video game characters Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man's marriage, had garnered the attention of literary critics and even caught the eye of Oprah Winfrey herself, who was rumored to be considering it for her esteemed book club. As the sun-drenched days of July enveloped Turks and Caicos, Olivia found solace in the island's pristine beaches and azure waters. She reveled in the vibrant culture and soaked up the local flavors, immersing herself in the tapestry of this idyllic paradise. Little did she know that her time in this tropical haven would be tragically cut short. The tranquility of the turquoise waters surrounding the idyllic Turks and Caicos Islands was shattered on a sweltering afternoon in July 2004. Patty Brecht, a tourist from West Islip, New York, was innocently strolling along the pristine beach when she stumbled upon a horrifying sight. Half buried in the sand, she discovered the severed head of Olivia Watson, a vibrant 29-year-old travel blogger from Bentonville, Arkansas, whose love for adventure and exploration had brought her to this tropical paradise. News of the discovery spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves far beyond the tight-knit community of the travel blogging world. As the investigation unfolded, authorities would scour the crime scene for any clues that could shed light on Olivia's untimely demise. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of serenity, now held a dark secret. The island chain, known for its pristine beauty and luxurious resorts, became a hotbed of media attention. News outlets descended upon Turks and Caicos, hungry for the latest updates on the investigation. Journalists set up camp near the crime scene, their cameras capturing the somber atmosphere that had engulfed the once tranquil paradise. Rumors and speculations ran rampant, fueled by the media coverage. The local community, usually tight-knit and welcoming, became wary of outsiders as suspicion hung in the air. Tourists, who had once flocked to the islands for their picturesque beaches and vibrant culture, now hesitated, unsure of the safety of this once-beloved destination. Turks and Caicos, once a paradise for many, had become a haunting reminder of the brutality that shattered its tranquility. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of beauty, now held a dark secret that refused to be forgotten. On that fateful afternoon in July 2004, the pristine beaches of Turks and Caicos transformed into a chilling crime scene. Detectives Michael Sanchez and Tamar Rodriguez, seasoned investigators from the local police force, arrived swiftly to confront the grim reality that awaited them. The turquoise waters, once a symbol of tranquility, now mirrored the horror that had unfolded. The sand, usually soft and inviting, was stained crimson, bearing witness to the violence that had taken place. The scene resembled something out of a crime drama, a shocking tableau that would haunt the island's residents for years to come. The head of Olivia Watson, the vibrant and adventurous travel blogger, was found half buried in the sand, roughly severed. The sheer brutality of the crime hinted at a motive fueled by rage, leaving the detectives puzzled and the community in shock. The absence of any immediate clues regarding the cause of death or location of the rest of her body only deepened the mystery surrounding this heinous act. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives meticulously combed through every inch of the crime scene. They painstakingly collected samples of the stained sand, preserving the evidence that would later be subjected to rigorous forensic analysis. The sand, once a symbol of leisure and relaxation, now held the key to unraveling the truth behind Olivia's tragic demise. Local residents were gripped with fear and apprehension, Their once idyllic paradise transformed into a nightmare. The murder cast a dark shadow over the island, shattering the sense of security that had once prevailed. Tourists, who had flocked to Turks and Caicos for its pristine beauty, now found themselves questioning their decision to visit this once tranquil destination. As the investigation continued, the detectives delved into Olivia's life, seeking any possible leads that could shed light on her untimely demise. They meticulously reviewed her travel blog, scouring her post for any hints or clues that could point them in the right direction. The blog, once a testament to Olivia's adventurous spirit, now served as a haunting reminder of a life cut short. Jason Reyes, a 30-year-old software engineer, was the devoted boyfriend of Olivia Watson, the vibrant travel blogger whose tragic death shocked the idyllic island chain of Turks and Caicos in July 2004. Described as charming and charismatic, Jason had won the hearts of many with his affable personality. However, behind his charming exterior lay a darker side that friends of the couple had started to notice. According to those close to them, Jason's behavior had taken a turn for the worse in recent months. While he appeared to be deeply in love with Olivia, his possessive and controlling tendencies had become increasingly apparent. Friends of the couple revealed that Jason had been involved in multiple affairs with other women, despite his supposed commitment to Olivia. The couple's friends were taken aback by the stark contrast between Jason's public persona and his private actions. They recalled instances where he would shower Olivia with gifts and affection, only to later display jealousy and anger when she interacted with other people, particularly men. These incidents had caused tension within their relationship, and Olivia's friends had expressed concern about the toxic dynamic that was developing. In addition to his troubled relationship with Olivia, Jason had also been facing difficulties at work. Colleagues at the software engineering firm where he was employed described him as highly intelligent but increasingly isolated and moody. Some even mentioned that he had been reprimanded by his superiors for missing deadlines and exhibiting erratic behavior. As news of Olivia's tragic death spread, the media began to dig deeper into the couple's relationship. Rumors of Jason's infidelity and controlling behavior started to circulate, capturing the attention of the public. The local newspaper, the Turks and Caicos Daily, ran a front-page article detailing the couple's tumultuous relationship, citing anonymous sources close to the investigation. Luana Parker, 34, a receptionist at Walmart headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, was known for her outgoing and vivacious personality. She had been Olivia Watson's loyal best friend for years, always by her side through thick and thin. Their bond was unbreakable, or so it seemed. During their trip to Turks and Caicos in July 2004, Luana's protective nature was on full display. She made sure Olivia was safe at all times, ensuring they followed proper safety protocols and avoided any risky situations. Luana's dedication to her friend was unwavering, but little did Olivia know that Luana held a secret that could shatter their friendship forever. Luana had been secretly involved in a passionate love affair with Jason Reyes, Olivia's boyfriend. It was a relationship fueled by desire and forbidden love, hidden behind closed doors. Luana's heart yearned for Jason, the man who charmed her with his charismatic personality. She couldn't resist his allure, even though she knew it was wrong. As the days in paradise unfolded, Luana found herself torn between her loyalty to Olivia and her intense love for Jason. She struggled to keep her emotions in check, constantly battling the guilt that consumed her. The weight of her secret became unbearable, threatening to destroy the very foundation of their friendship. In the aftermath of Olivia's death, Luana found herself caught in a web of lies and deceit. She knew she had to come clean about her affair with Jason, but the fear of losing everything held her back. She couldn't bear the thought of losing both Olivia and Jason, the two people who had become her whole world. As the investigation into Olivia's murder intensified, the truth began to unravel. Luana's secret was exposed, and the media frenzy surrounding the case only added to the pressure. The world watched as this small island paradise became the backdrop for a scandal that would forever change the lives of those involved. In the midst of the investigation into Olivia Watson's brutal murder, a crucial piece of evidence emerged that sent shockwaves through the media. It was revealed that Olivia had participated in a local tradition known as Island Love, a ritual where participants, locals and tourists alike, were randomly paired for sex. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the already perplexing case. Olivia's island love partner was none other than Joey Clacker, a 45-year-old married man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Joey, a mild-mannered accountant by day, had been visiting the Turks and Caicos Islands with his wife and 5 children. The news of his involvement in this scandalous affair sent shockwaves through his community back home. The island love tradition, while considered a titillating and exciting adventure for many, had now become a focal point in the investigation. Detectives Michael Sanchez and Tamara Rodriguez meticulously combed through the details, trying to determine if this encounter held any significance in Olivia's murder. As the investigation unfolded, the media frenzy surrounding Olivia's murder intensified. News outlets from Bentonville, Arkansas to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and beyond were captivated by the shocking turn of events. Headlines from the New York Post screamed about the island love tragedy, with journalists speculating about the potential motives and hidden secrets behind Olivia and Joey's ill-fated encounter. Friends and family of Olivia were left bewildered by this unexpected twist. How could their vibrant and adventurous Olivia, known for her love of travel and exploration, find herself entangled in such a sordid affair? The once idyllic paradise of Turks and Caicos had now become a hotbed of speculation and intrigue. In the picturesque setting of Turks and Caicos in July 2004, a scandalous affair unfolded, shattering the tranquility of this idyllic island chain. Joey Clacker, a married man and father of 5 from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, found himself entangled in a web of desire and obsession with Olivia Watson, the vibrant travel blogger whose life was tragically cut short. Joey, known for his adventurous spirit and magnetic personality, willingly participated in the local tradition known as island love. This tradition, which paired participants for a one night of sex, brought Joey and Olivia together in a passionate encounter. Their connection was intense, but short-lived, as Olivia's independent spirit and commitment to her career and boyfriend prevented any further romantic involvement. However, the flame of Joey's infatuation continued to burn. Consumed by jealousy and resentment towards anyone who stood in his way, Joey's obsession with Olivia took a dark turn. Friends close to the couple revealed that Joey's feelings for Olivia grew into an unhealthy fixation, leading him down a dangerous path. The facade of friendship between Joey and Olivia crumbled as his true intentions were exposed. Friends and acquaintances were shocked to discover that Joey, a seemingly devoted family man, harbored a secret desire to win Olivia back. His actions became increasingly erratic as he desperately sought to rekindle their connection. As authorities delved deeper into the investigation surrounding Olivia's murder, they discovered the extent of Joey's obsession. The evidence pointed to a motive driven by jealousy and a desperate desire to possess Olivia, even if it meant resorting to violence. The shocking murder case that unfolded on the idyllic island chain of Turks and Caicos in July 2004 took a startling turn. As the investigation progressed, a web of love, lies, and betrayal begins to unravel, revealing a sinister plot that ended in the tragic death of Olivia Watson, a vibrant travel blogger. New evidence emerged, shedding light on the motive behind Olivia's brutal murder. It was none other than Luana Parker, Olivia's seemingly loyal best friend, who masterminded the heinous crime. Luana's jealousy and resentment towards Olivia's relationship with Jason Reyes, Olivia's devoted boyfriend and Luana's lover, drove her to take drastic measures to eliminate her perceived rival. Driven by envy and insecurity, Luana hatched a plan to ensure Jason's unwavering devotion to her and to remove any threat to their relationship. The revelation of Olivia's participation in the local tradition of island love, where participants were randomly paired for a sex, became the catalyst for Luana's sinister plot. Jason, upon discovering Olivia's involvement in island love, was consumed by a mix of emotions. His love for Olivia and his anger at being betrayed pushed him to join Luana in the murder plot. Together, they cornered Olivia on a secluded beach, wielding coconuts as their deadly weapons, and beat her to death in that dismembering her body afterwards, leaving her body to the waves but keeping her head in the sand. The investigation has uncovered a series of events that paint a chilling picture of the days leading up to the murder. Friends of the couple revealed that Jason, known for his charming and charismatic personality, had a darker side. He became increasingly possessive and controlling in his relationship with Olivia, despite engaging in multiple affairs with other women. Despite their arrest, the tranquility of Turks and Caicos has been forever shattered, and the repercussions of this crime will be felt for years to come. The trial that unfolded in the wake of Olivia Watson's brutal murder in Turks and Caicos in July 2004 was a harrowing ordeal for her grieving family and the tight-knit island community. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutor Diana Lachlan-Brose meticulously presented the evidence, painting a vivid picture of deceit and violence that had shattered the tranquility of this idyllic paradise. The defense attorney fought desperately to create doubt, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The jury listened intently as witness after witness took the stand, recounting the events that led to Olivia's tragic demise. The testimony of Patty Brecht, the beachcomber who stumbled upon Olivia's half-buried body, sent shivers down the spines of those in the courtroom. The sight of Olivia's bloody, severed head, stained crimson by the violence inflicted upon her, was etched in the memories of all who bore witness. The prosecution presented a crucial piece of evidence: Olivia's participation in a local tradition called island love. This tradition, as it turned out, involved random pairings for one night of sex. Olivia's assigned partner was Joey Clacker, a married man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The revelation of this affair added a layer of complexity to the case, further entangling the lives of those involved. As the trial progressed, the motive behind the murder began to unravel. It was revealed that Olivia's boyfriend, Jason Reyes, had discovered her involvement in island love and had become consumed by jealousy. Driven by a toxic combination of envy and insecurity, Jason enlisted the help of his secret lover and Olivia's best friend, Luana Parker, to carry out the heinous act. The courtroom was filled with gasps as the details of the twisted murder plot were laid bare. Jason and Luana had cornered Olivia on a secluded beach, armed with coconuts, and beat her to death, later dismembering her body. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the community, leaving a lasting scar on the once tranquil island. Finally, after weeks of emotional testimony and legal arguments, the jury reached a verdict. Both Jason and Luana were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Olivia's family, though finding a measure of solace in the outcome, knew that their lives would never be the same again. As the trial came to a close, the idyllic paradise of Turks and Caicos was forever tainted by the memory of this brutal crime. The island, known for its turquoise waters and pristine beaches, would now also be associated with the darkness that had unfolded within its borders. In the aftermath of the brutal murder that shook the idyllic island paradise of Turks and Caicos in July of 2004, the community slowly began the process of healing. For Olivia's family, the pain of their loss was immeasurable. They sought solace in the memories of their vibrant and adventurous daughter, cherishing the moments they had shared. Though devastated, they found strength in the support of their community and the unwavering dedication of the detectives who fought for justice. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, but the echoes of Olivia's murder would forever linger in the collective memory of Turks and Caicos. The island slowly regained its sense of tranquility, but the scars left by the tragedy would never fully fade. Detectives Sanchez and Rodriguez, forever changed by their involvement in the case, continued their fight for justice in other investigations. Their tireless dedication to upholding the law and protecting their community remained unwavering. In the end, Olivia's story serves as a somber reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that even in the most picturesque of places, darkness can take hold. The idyllic island paradise of Turks and Caicos may have been marred by this brutal crime, but the community's resilience and determination to move forward ensured that hope would prevail. Samantha Hong, a 28-year-old personal assistant, lived a life that seemed straight out of a glossy magazine. Residing in the affluent town of Walnut Creek, Samantha was renowned for her opulent lifestyle, adorned in the finest designer clothing and indulging in a world of luxury. Her presence was a constant spectacle, capturing the attention of those who craved a glimpse into her seemingly perfect existence. Behind the facade of confidence, however, Samantha battled deep-rooted insecurities and an insatiable craving for validation. Her relentless pursuit of attention fueled her personal and professional life, propelling her towards success while leaving a trail of envious acquaintances in her wake. Samantha's life was a captivating blend of glamour and ambition. She frequented trendy restaurants, mingling with influential figures in the fashion and entertainment industry. Her social circle boasted celebrities, socialites, and power players, all eager to bask in the radiance of her charismatic persona. As we dig deeper into Samantha's life, we uncover the intricate web of relationships that surrounded her. Rumors of a love triangle emerge, pitting Samantha against two individuals vying for her affections. The tension and jealousy that simmered beneath the surface would ultimately lead to a devastating outcome. On the chilling evening of November 17, 2002, tragedy struck the quiet town of Walnut Creek, California, as the lifeless body of Samantha Hong, a 28-year-old personal assistant, was discovered under mysterious circumstances. The rain poured relentlessly, adding to the somber atmosphere that engulfed the crime scene. It was around 7:30 p.m. when Patty Snarlbrook, a 91-year-old passerby, unintentionally stumbled upon the horrifying sight that would forever haunt her. As Patty made her way home, her frail frame braving the elements, she noticed a peculiar disturbance near a dimly lit park. Curiosity piqued, she approached cautiously, her heart pounding with a mix of trepidation and curiosity. As Patty drew closer, her eyes widened in shock and disbelief. There, lying on the cold, wet pavement, was the lifeless form of Samantha Hong. The scene was reminiscent of a noir film, with the raindrops falling like tears from the sky, mirroring the sorrow felt by those who would soon learn of Samantha's tragic fate. Patty, a woman of advanced age but sharp intellect, immediately recognized the severity of the situation. Panic set in as she fumbled for her cell phone, dialing 911 with trembling hands. Her voice quivered as she relayed the grim discovery to the emergency operator, her words punctuated by the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement. Within minutes, the sound of sirens pierced the air, signaling the arrival of the authorities. The scene quickly transformed into a hive of activity as police officers and forensic experts descended upon the crime scene. Yellow crime scene tape was stretched across the alleyway, marking it as a place of tragedy and intrigue. As investigators meticulously combed through the evidence, the media frenzy surrounding the case intensified. The murder of Samantha Hong had become a captivating mystery that captivated the Bay Area, leaving no one untouched by its chilling implications. The police wasted no time in responding to the report of Samantha Hong's lifeless body. Detectives Julian Laughlin and Carolina Ramirez arrived at the scene, their faces grim with determination. The rain poured down relentlessly, adding to the somber atmosphere that hung over the crime scene. The location where Samantha's body was discovered was a secluded spot in a Walnut Creek park. The park, usually a place of tranquility and leisure, had now become the center of a macabre investigation. Yellow police tape cordoned off the area, preventing curious onlookers from getting too close. As the detectives approached the crime scene, they could see the unmistakable stain of blood on the ground. It was a chilling sight, a stark contrast against the wet grass and fallen leaves. The rain had washed away some of the evidence, but there were still enough clues for the investigators to work with. The first step was to secure the area and ensure that no evidence was disturbed. Detective Laughlin carefully placed markers next to each significant item, meticulously documenting their position. He then directed the crime scene technicians to begin their work. The forensic team, dressed in white protective suits, started their search for clues. They meticulously combed through the area, collecting samples of the soil, leaves, and any other potential evidence. Every step was taken with utmost care, as even the smallest detail could prove crucial in solving the case. Detective Ramirez focused her attention on Samantha's personal belongings. She carefully examined the victim's handbag, searching for any items that may provide insight into her life and potential motives for her murder. Among the contents, she found a receipt from a local jewelry store, indicating that Samantha had recently purchased an expensive necklace. Could this purchase be connected to her untimely demise? Meanwhile, Detective Laughlin interviewed witnesses who frequented the park. He spoke to joggers, dog walkers, and anyone who might have seen something out of the ordinary on that fateful day. One witness mentioned seeing a suspicious-looking man lurking near the crime scene, but his description was vague, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. As the investigation progressed, The detectives faced the challenge of piecing together the puzzle of Samantha's murder. With each passing day, the pressure mounted to solve the case and bring justice to Samantha and her grieving loved ones. Daniel "Dan" Tiersbeek, a 32-year-old business executive, found himself at the center of a storm of suspicion surrounding the tragic murder of Samantha Hong. Known for his charm and influential connections, Dan was no stranger to the glitz and glamour of the high-flying lifestyle that Samantha reveled in. However, beneath his polished exterior, a web of secrets and guilt threatened to unravel. As the investigation unfolded, the police focused their attention on Dan, meticulously dissecting his every move and motive. The media frenzy surrounding the case only intensified the scrutiny on him. Reporters camped outside his upscale apartment building, eager to capture any glimpse of the man who was entangled in this deadly love triangle. In the interrogation room, Dan's carefully crafted facade began to crack. Under the relentless questioning of Detective Laughlin, beads of sweat formed on Dan's forehead, betraying his inner turmoil. The detective pressed him on the nature of his relationship with Samantha, the extent of their involvement, and any potential motive for her murder. Dan's voice trembled as he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that he had nothing to do with Samantha's untimely demise. He recounted their passionate affair, painting a picture of a torrid love affair that had consumed them both. He spoke of the nights spent at exclusive restaurants, the lavish gifts he showered upon her, and the trips they took to Hawaii and Las Vegas. But the detectives were not easily swayed by Dan's words. They delved deep into his financial records, uncovering a series of suspicious transactions that raised eyebrows. Large sums of money had been transferred from his accounts in the weeks leading up to Samantha's murder. The police wondered if these funds were used to hire a hitman or to cover up any evidence of his involvement. But amidst the media frenzy, justice remained the ultimate goal. The detectives meticulously gathered evidence, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of the truth. They were determined to unveil the dark secrets that lay hidden beneath the glossy surface of Samantha's glamorous life. In the investigation into the tragic murder of Samantha Hong, another suspect emerged, Emily Tebe, the 34-year-old wife of Dan Tebe. Emily seemed to embody the picture-perfect suburban wife, with her neatly manicured lawn, charming smile, and her beloved chihuahua, Carl J. Wertheimer. However, beneath her demure facade, a seething rage towards Samantha lurked. Emily saw Samantha as a threat to her marriage, a woman who had captivated her husband's attention and shattered the tranquility of their once harmonious life. Consumed by jealousy, Emily meticulously devised a plan to eliminate her romantic rival, leaving no stone unturned in her quest for vengeance. The police, led by detectives Julian Laughlin and Carolina Ramirez, delved into Emily's background, seeking to uncover the truth behind her seemingly innocent exterior. They discovered a woman who had meticulously crafted a facade of suburban bliss, but harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Samantha. As the investigators delved deeper, they discovered a trove of evidence that pointed towards Emily's involvement in Samantha's murder. They found a series of incriminating text messages exchanged between Emily and a mysterious contact known only as R. These messages revealed a sinister plot to poison Samantha with a lethal dose of arsenic, cunningly laced in her favorite champagne. The journal contained chilling entries, describing in meticulous detail the steps Emily had taken to ensure Samantha's demise. During the police interrogation, Emily's demeanor oscillated between calm denials and moments of intense anger. She vehemently denied any involvement in Samantha's death, claiming the texts and the journal entries were a private fantasy meant to relieve her anger. But her carefully constructed facade began to crumble under the intense interrogation against her. As the investigation continued, the detectives meticulously pieced together the puzzle, connecting the dots between Emily's motive, her actions, and the tragic outcome. The police published a preliminary investigation report, written at a fourth-grade vocabulary level of the insured that even the youngest readers could understand the gravity of the situation. As the investigation into Samantha Hong's murder continued, a surprising suspect emerged from the shadows. Tiffany Watson, a 25-year-old receptionist and co-worker of Samantha. Tiffany's resentment towards Samantha's success and glamorous lifestyle had been simmering beneath the surface for months. and now the police had reason to believe that her envy had driven her to commit a heinous crime. Tiffany, with her long brown hair and piercing blue eyes, seemed like an unlikely suspect. She often wore a fake smile and spoke in a soft, innocent voice that could easily deceive those around her. But the detectives saw through her facade and were determined to uncover the truth. During the police interrogation, Tiffany's demeanor shifted between feigned innocence and veiled hostility. She tried to downplay her rivalry with Samantha, claiming that they were just co-workers and that she had no reason to harm her. But the evidence told a different story. The detectives discovered that Tiffany had been secretly stalking Samantha for months. She had meticulously collected newspaper clippings and magazine articles featuring Samantha's success, pinning them to a corkboard in her small apartment. The board was covered in red string, connecting the articles in a web of envy and obsession. Furthermore, the detectives found a diary hidden under Tiffany's mattress. Its pages were filled with delirious, sexually explicit and disturbing entries detailing Tiffany's growing hatred and sexual attraction towards Samantha. She wrote about how Samantha's designer clothes and luxurious lifestyle made her feel inferior and how she would do anything to bring Samantha down. The detectives also uncovered a receipt from a local pharmacy dated November 10, 2002. The receipt showed that Tiffany had purchased a bottle of arsenic, the same deadly poison that had ended Samantha's life. The detectives also found traces of arsenic in Tiffany's apartment, linking her directly to the murder. As the evidence mounted against her, Tiffany's composed demeanor began to crumble. She became more agitated, her voice trembling as she continued to deny any involvement in Samantha's death. She claimed she had bought the bottle of arsenic to kill herself. The investigation into Samantha Hong's murder had taken a dark turn, revealing how love, envy, and betrayal that can exist together within the human heart. The detectives' relentless pursuit of justice had brought them closer to the truth, but there were still unanswered questions. What other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface? After an intense and painstaking investigation, the truth behind Samantha Hong's untimely demise finally was unveiled. The culprit responsible for this heinous crime was none other than Emily Tebe, the wife of Samantha's wealthy lover, Daniel Dan Tebe. Emily, a seemingly ordinary 34-year-old woman, harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Samantha. She perceived Samantha as a threat to her marriage and meticulously devised a plan to eliminate her romantic rival. Consumed by a toxic mix of jealousy and betrayal, Emily cunningly poisoned Samantha with a lethal dose of arsenic, cleverly laced in her favorite champagne. The police, led by detectives Julian Laughlin and Carolina Ramirez, left no stone unturned in their quest for justice. Their relentless pursuit of the truth led them to uncover crucial evidence that ultimately pointed to Emily as the mastermind behind this chilling murder. As the investigation intensified, the detectives interrogated Emily, unmasking her manipulative nature and her willingness to go to extreme lengths to eliminate her competition. Emily's responses ranged from calm denials to moments of intense anger, painting a complex portrait of a woman driven by envy and consumed by her own dark desires. The arrest of Emily Tebe sent shockwaves through the wealthy community of Walnut Creek, California, leaving friends and neighbors stunned by the revelation that a seemingly ordinary woman could be capable of such a heinous act. Samantha's family, though devastated by their loss, found solace in the fact that justice had been served. As the trial of Emily Tebe looms on the horizon, the community eagerly awaits the day when she will face the consequences of her actions. In the end, Samantha's vibrant spirit lives on, a reminder of the tragic consequences that can arise from the darkest corners of the human psyche. The legacy of this case will forever serve as a cautionary tale, reminding us all of the importance of trust, loyalty, and the devastating consequences that can arise when these values are forsaken. The trial that ensued after Samantha Hong's tragic murder in November 2002 captivated the area, with media outlets like KGO and CanTV closely following the proceedings. Emily Tebe, the mastermind behind the twisted plot to eliminate her husband's mistress, stood at the center of the courtroom, her fate hanging in the balance. In a packed courtroom, the prosecution presented a meticulously crafted case against Emily, led by the formidable prosecutor Tabitha Quasimodo. Quasimodo, known for her tenacity and unwavering dedication to justice, left no stone unturned in her pursuit of the truth. She skillfully weaved together witness testimonies, forensic evidence, and a compelling narrative that painted Emily as a calculating and cold-blooded murderer. The defense attorney, Michael Laraboots, fought tirelessly to protect his client's interests. Laraboots, renowned for his ability to sway juries with his persuasive arguments, employed every legal tactic in his arsenal to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. He called into question the reliability of the evidence, challenged the credibility of witnesses, and attempted to create a narrative that placed the blame elsewhere. Samantha's family, clad in somber attire, sat in the front row, their eyes fixed on the proceedings. The weight of their loss was palpable, and their hope for justice was intertwined with a sense of grief that seemed insurmountable. The courtroom itself buzzed with tension, as the public and media awaited the verdict that would determine Emily's fate. After weeks of gripping testimony and impassioned arguments, the jury retired to deliberate. Their decision would shape the lives of both the victims and the perpetrators' families, and the nation held its breath in anticipation. Finally, the verdict was delivered. Emily Tebe was found guilty on all charges. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the gravity of the decision sunk in. Samantha's family, though relieved that justice was served, struggled to find solace in the knowledge that their beloved daughter and sister could never be brought back. The sentencing phase of the trial commenced, and emotions ran high. The prosecution argued for a sentence that reflected the heinous nature of the crime, citing the pain and suffering inflicted upon Samantha and her loved ones. The defense, on the other hand, pleaded for leniency, highlighting Emily's lack of prior criminal history and her potential for rehabilitation. Ultimately, the judge, Honorable William Galville Gavelson, delivered the sentence. Emily Tebe was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief, anger, and sadness. The impact of the verdict reverberated through the lives of all those involved, leaving a lasting scar that would never fully heal. As the trial concluded, the media frenzy surrounding the case gradually subsided, but the memory of Samantha Hong and the chilling tale of betrayal, jealousy, and revenge would forever remain etched in the annals of crime history. In the aftermath of the highly publicized trial, the lives of those involved in the Samantha Hong murder case took unexpected turns. For Daniel Dan Tebe, the wealthy businessman who had been entangled in a deadly love triangle, life would never be the same. The trial had exposed his infidelity and shattered his marriage to Emily Tebe. Dan, now a recluse, was rarely seen in public, preferring to spend his days in his secluded mansion overlooking the picturesque hills of Walnut Creek. His once thriving business empire had crumbled under the weight of scandal, leaving him a shadow of his former self. Meanwhile, Emily Thompson, the mastermind behind the twisted plot, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her days were now spent behind cold steel bars, contemplating the consequences of her actions. The monotony of prison life was a stark contrast to the glamorous world she had once inhabited. The media circus that had surrounded the trial had moved on to other sensational stories, leaving Emily to face the harsh reality of her choices alone. As for Samantha's family, the wounds of her untimely death were still fresh. They had found solace in each other's company and the support of their close-knit community. The Samantha Hong Foundation, established in her memory, had become a beacon of hope for victims of domestic violence. Through their tireless efforts, the foundation provided resources and support to those in need, ensuring that Samantha's legacy lived on. The police officers who had tirelessly worked on the case, Detectives Julian Laughlin and Carolina Ramirez, were commended for their dedication and professionalism. Their meticulous investigation had brought justice to Samantha and closure to her grieving family. Their names would forever be etched in the annals of crime history, remembered as the heroes who had unraveled the truth behind the chilling murder. As the years passed, the Samantha Hong murder case faded from the headlines, becoming a distant memory for most. The once bustling streets of Walnut Creek returned to their peaceful existence, with residents going about their daily lives. The scars left by the tragic events of November 2002 would always remain, a reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk within the human heart. In the heart of America's breadbasket, Omaha, Nebraska, Melanie Vandermere, a 34-year-old bank employee, lived a life marked by ambition and familial love. A graduate of Creighton University, she had majored in finance, a field she navigated with precision and passion. As a mother to 3-month-old Addison and wife to Peter Vandermere, Melanie's life was a tapestry of modern motherhood and career aspirations. Melanie's colleagues at the First National Bank of Omaha knew her as a diligent worker, often staying late to ensure her clients' needs were met. Her LinkedIn profile, a relatively new phenomenon in June of 2005, showcased endorsements for her financial acumen and dedication. At home, Melanie was the nucleus of her family, her relationship with her husband Peter appearing to be a testament to partnership and mutual support, at least on the surface. Her family, including her sister Emily and parents John and Diane, were fixtures in her life. They often gathered for Sunday dinners, a tradition that Melanie cherished. These intimate gatherings were a blend of old and new, where stories from the past mingled with discussions of the latest episode of Desperate Housewives, a show Melanie enjoyed for its portrayal of complex women. Melanie's dreams extended beyond the confines of her immediate world. She envisioned a future where her daughter would have opportunities she had worked hard to secure. Only days before her death, Melanie had excitedly spoken of plans to enroll Addison in the prestigious Brownell Talbot School, ensuring a head start for her education. As Melanie and Peter boarded their flight to Cancun, a couple's only trip to celebrate their second marriage anniversary, her thoughts were a mix of anticipation for the sandy beaches she'd seen in Travel and Leisure magazine and a well-deserved break from the rigors of new parenthood. Little did she know that this journey to paradise would be her last. On June 15, 2005, as the early morning sun cast a golden hue over the white sands of Cancun, a grim discovery disrupted the serene ambience of this tropical haven. At approximately 6:30 a.m., with the resort town slowly stirring to life, Maria Hernandez, an 82-year-old local known for her daily beachcombing rituals, stumbled upon a scene that would haunt the peaceful shores and make headlines far beyond the Yucatan Peninsula. The body of Melanie Vandermere, still clad in a J.Crew bikini, a popular brand featured in the summer catalogs of that year, was found lifeless, embraced by the gentle yet relentless waves of the Gulf of Mexico. Maria, who had lived through the transformation of Cancun from a sleepy fishing village to a bustling tourist hotspot, was no stranger to the occasional aftermath of nighttime revelries left on the beach. However, the sight of Melanie's body was an inconceivable departure from the norm. The local authorities were notified promptly, thanks to a nearby tourist who lent Maria his Nokia cell phone, a device that had become a staple in the connectivity of the era. The police arrived on the scene with a sense of urgency, a response time reflecting the gravity of the situation and the potential impact on Cancun's image as a safe and exotic getaway, frequently featured in the pages of Condé Nast Traveler. The weather, typically idyllic for this time of year, seemed to mourn with a somber sky and a gentle breeze that offered no solace to the first responders. The beach, usually adorned with sun loungers and vibrant umbrellas, was now cordoned off with yellow tape, standing in stark contrast to the picturesque setting that had drawn Melanie and countless others to its shores. Maria, with decades of life etched into her weathered face, displayed a stoic calmness that belied the shock of her discovery. Her statement to the police was clear and concise, providing the initial narrative to what would become a complex and heart-wrenching investigation into the untimely death of a young mother and wife. The arrival of the Quintana Roo police at the now secluded section of Cancun's coastline was swift, a testament to the Mexican authorities' commitment to maintaining the resort's image, as depicted in glossy brochures, a sun-soaked retreat from the daily grind. Detectives Alejandro Ruiz and Sofia Blanco, seasoned officers with years of experience between them, were met with a scene that juxtaposed the natural beauty of the locale with a chilling narrative. The date was June 15, 2005, a time when the world's eyes were often fixed on the developments of the Iraq War, broadcasted by CNN and other 24-hour news channels. Yet here, the only conflict was between the tranquility of the resort town and the violence suggested by the discovery at its shore. The weather, a balmy 82 degrees with a light breeze, seemed incongruous with the gravity of the crime scene. Detective Ruiz, with his stern demeanor and sharp eye for detail, noted the absence of struggle. The sand around Melanie's body was undisturbed, save for the impressions left by Maria Hernandez's early morning discovery. Detective Blanco, known for her empathy and keen intuition, observed the victim's peaceful expression, a stark contrast to the brutality of her demise. The crime scene was devoid of the expected chaos that accompanies violence. There was no blood, no signs of a conventional struggle. The detectives surmised that Melanie had been drowned, a hypothesis that would later be confirmed by the medical examiner. The Gulf waters had cleansed any immediate evidence, leaving the investigators to rely on forensic methods that were becoming increasingly sophisticated, even as shows like CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, popularized them to the public. The police meticulously documented the scene, utilizing digital cameras, a relatively new addition to their investigative toolkit, to capture the area in detail. They collected samples of sand and water near the body, hoping that the burgeoning field of forensic science might yield microscopic clues. The absence of Melanie's personal effects suggested a robbery or an attempt to conceal her identity, complicating the case further. As the sun climbed higher, casting a harsh light on the grim task at hand, the detectives knew that the answers they sought might be as elusive as the motives behind this tragic end to a vacation that promised relaxation and renewal. As the investigation into Melanie Vandermere's untimely death unfolded, the focus turned to her husband, Peter Vandermere, a 35-year-old financial advisor. Amidst the swaying palms and sun-soaked beaches of Cancun, a stark contrast to the couple's quiet life in Omaha, Nebraska, Peter found himself at the center of a murder inquiry. With a reputation for ambition and a seemingly unwavering commitment to his family, Peter's life was under intense scrutiny. Peter's communications were being combed through by local authorities. Detectives sifted through call logs and messages, searching for inconsistencies in his account of their vacation, which coincided with the 2005 MTV Movie Awards buzz, an event Melanie had been excited to discuss during their trip. During the interrogation, held within the stark walls of the Cancun Police Department, Peter's composure was as fluctuating as the stock market he navigated for a living. He spoke of their plans to visit the renowned Chichen Itza ruins and how they had dined at the Hard Rock Cafe Cancun just the night before Melanie's disappearance. Yet, when pressed about rumors of marital strife, his demeanor shifted. His hands, which had calmly folded a napkin from the cafe into neat squares on the table, now clenched into fists. The detectives noted Peter's agitation when they inquired about the couple's financial situation, which was reportedly strained due to his recent investment in the real estate boom. Considered precarious by some after the 2005 housing market predictions, Peter vehemently denied any discord, attributing any perceived tension to the normal stress of parenting a new baby and Melanie's ambition to ascend the corporate ladder at her bank. However, the police had uncovered evidence of several heated exchanges between Peter and Melanie, captured by the hotel's security cameras. These exchanges painted a picture of a relationship fraying at the edges, despite the idyllic setting. The investigation was further complicated by the discovery of a substantial life insurance policy taken out on Melanie, with Peter as the sole beneficiary, a common trope in true crime tales that raised eyebrows among the investigators. As the interrogation stretched into the evening, the detectives were aware that the burden of proof lay heavy on their shoulders. Cancun, a city pulsating with the rhythm of nightlife and the whispers of Caribbean winds, was now the backdrop of a narrative that had shifted from romantic getaway to sinister plot. The investigation into Melanie Vandermere's death took a dramatic turn with the questioning of Tommy Walker, a 23-year-old Australian backpacker whose nomadic lifestyle had led him to the white sands of Cancun. His rugged charm and the allure of adventure had captivated Melanie, resulting in a clandestine affair that now placed him in the crosshairs of a murder investigation. Tommy's arrival in Cancun had been part of a broader itinerary that included the world's most exotic locales, a journey he meticulously documented on his blog, a popular medium in the burgeoning age of social media. His digital footprint, including check-ins at Cancun's Coco Bongo Club the night of June 14th, provided the police with a timeline of his movements. The interrogation took place against the backdrop of a series of benefit concerts aimed at combating global poverty, mirroring the stark contrast between Tommy's free-spirited existence and the gravity of the situation at hand. His defense was as unwavering as the global resolve to make poverty history. Detectives probed Tommy about his relationship with Melanie, questioning whether jealousy might have driven him to an act of violence. The Australian, sporting a billabong tank top and a sunburned demeanor, maintained his innocence. He recounted their last meeting, insisting it was nothing more than a farewell before he continued his travels to the next destination on his list, which included the recently opened Disneyland Hong Kong. Despite his assertions of innocence, the police were skeptical. The affair had been a poorly kept secret, whispers of which had even reached the ears of the staff at the Moon Palace resort where the Vandermeres were staying. Tommy's passport and belongings were seized, revealing a postcard addressed to Melanie, the message on the back unfinished and a tone, one of longing. As the interrogation concluded, Tommy's fate hung in the balance, much like the Space Shuttle Discovery, which was grounded due to fuel sensor issues, delaying its much-anticipated return to flight. The investigators were left to ponder whether Tommy Walker's desire for freedom had been eclipsed by a darker impulse. On June 17th, as Cancun's tourist throngs reveled in the summer heat, a breakthrough emerged in the Vandermere case. A local vendor, sifting through the sands to set up his beachside souvenir stand, unearthed Melanie's missing purse. The discovery, mere meters from the Moon Palace Resort, reignited the investigation with newfound urgency. The sandy handbag, a Coach leather tote, a recent anniversary gift from Peter, contained more than the usual vacationer's essentials. Among the items were Melanie's hotel key card, a half-empty bottle of Banana Boat sunscreen, and a torn piece of paper that bore an enigmatic message written in what appeared to be Melanie's own hand. The cryptic note, partially smeared by sunscreen, seemed to be an unfinished sentence or a hastily scribbled thought. It read, "Meet me where the sun whispers goodbye," a phrase that detectives speculated could point to a clandestine meeting on the beach, perhaps with her lover, Tommy, or another unknown individual. The contents of the purse were meticulously cataloged and analyzed. Forensic technicians dusted for fingerprints, while digital specialists attempted to extract any latent data from the keycard, which might shed light on her final movements, a technique growing in sophistication. The case had all the hallmarks of a sensational story, a picturesque setting, a young mother's tragic end, and a narrative rife with potential jealousy and betrayal. As the summer sun set on another day in paradise, the investigation into Melanie Vandermere's death had taken a significant turn. The authorities hoped the purse would be a game-changer in uncovering the truth behind the tragedy. The serene shores of Cancun, usually a refuge for sunseekers, became the backdrop for a complex investigation as attention shifted to Maria Hernandez, the 82-year-old local who first stumbled upon Melanie Vandermere's body. Maria, a fixture on the beach, supported her family through what tourists left behind, her life story a stark contrast to the carefree vacationers surrounding her. Detectives delved into Maria's background, uncovering a life marked by resilience and hardship. Her daily routine, as unchanging as the tides, involved combing the beach each morning, a practice she had maintained for decades. This consistency, coupled with her discovery of the body, prompted authorities to consider her a person of interest. During her questioning, which took place in a room that felt as cold and clinical as the air-conditioned lobbies of the nearby luxury resorts, Maria maintained a stoic composure. Her account was detailed and precise, reminiscent of the factual reporting style seen in the pages of National Geographic, which featured an article on the resilience of the elderly. Investigators probed for a motive, speculating on a theft gone wrong. However, Maria's history was devoid of any criminal entanglements. Much like the pristine beaches she walked were free of the seaweed that often washed ashore elsewhere. Her hands, weathered from years of labor, showed no signs of a struggle, and her alibi for the time of Melanie's disappearance was corroborated by other locals. As the interrogation unfolded, Maria, despite the investigators' initial suspicions, emerged more as a witness than a perpetrator. The detectives concluded their session with Maria, her account leaving them with more questions than answers. The pursuit of justice for Melanie Vandermere continued, the case unfolding like the plot of a John Grisham novel, each chapter revealing new complexities. The investigation into Melanie Vandermere's death culminated in a revelation that would shock the tranquil community of Cancun. The evidence meticulously gathered and analyzed by local law enforcement pointed to one individual, Peter Vandermere, the victim's husband. The man who had presented himself as a grieving spouse was unmasked as the architect of a premeditated murder. Peter's facade began to crumble as detectives pieced together a timeline that contradicted his initial statements. Hotel surveillance footage, time-stamped and unambiguous in its storytelling, showed Peter's movements on the night of Melanie's disappearance. The footage, as revealing as the exposés featured in Time magazine, contradicted his alibi. Further incriminating evidence emerged from the couple's electronic devices. Emails retrieved from Melanie's BlackBerry, a device that had become synonymous with business communications, revealed a marriage fraught with tension and conflict. Peter's own laptop, a sleek Dell Inspiron which had been advertised as the perfect tool for the on-the-go professional, contained deleted files that were recovered by forensic experts. These files included internet searches for life insurance payouts and the effects of saltwater drowning. The case against Peter Vandermere was becoming as clear as the high-definition images broadcasted by a newly launched HD channel. The motive was a tapestry of betrayal, humiliation, and financial gain. Peter had learned of Melanie's affair through a message on her Nokia phone, a model praised for its reliability, and the revelation had ignited a murderous plan fueled by jealousy and rage. In the days leading up to the murder, Peter had been seen purchasing a large life insurance policy on Melanie, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. This policy, coupled with the couple's recent enrollment in an American Express travel insurance plan, painted a grim picture of premeditation. As the local community absorbed the news, the idyllic image of Cancun was temporarily overshadowed by a narrative of domestic tragedy. The case against Peter Vandermere was airtight, his arrest imminent, and the facade of the perfect family holiday was shattered forever. As the tropical storm clouds gathered over Cancun's horizon on June 20th, a different tempest was unfolding within the confines of the local police station. Peter Vandermere, once the bereaved husband, was apprehended by authorities in connection with the murder of his wife, Melanie Vandermere. The arrest marked a somber resolution to a case that had gripped the seaside city. The evidence against Peter had mounted steadily, with the meticulous work of the Cancun detectives mirroring the precision of a Swiss watch, a symbol of the same luxury Peter aspired to provide for his family. The detectives had constructed a detailed timeline of Melanie's final hours, corroborated by hotel surveillance footage and witness testimonies, which now pointed irrefutably to Peter's involvement. His apprehension occurred discreetly, away from the prying lenses of tourist digital cameras, which were becoming increasingly prevalent, much like the Canon EOS 350D that had been released earlier that year. Peter's demeanor during the arrest was one of disbelief. He appeared as disoriented as someone waking from a dream, his reality irrevocably altered. The news of Peter's arrest spread quickly, traveling through the channels of local media with fervor. The case had all the elements of a primetime drama, and public interest was piqued. Melanie's family, who had flown in from Nebraska, a state known for its rolling plains rather than sandy beaches, was present at the station. The mix of emotions was palpable: relief at the progress of the investigation, intertwined with the profound grief of loss. The Vandermere family had been regular attendees at the Heartland Church back home, seeking solace in their faith, which was now tested in the most tragic of circumstances. As Peter was escorted to a holding cell, the storm outside unleashed its fury on Cancun. The sound of rain on the police station roof provided a grim soundtrack to the unfolding events. The arrest marked the beginning of a new chapter in the case, one that would lead to the judicial system where evidence would be weighed and a verdict rendered. The trial of Peter Vandermere, set against the backdrop of a Cancun summer, commenced with the weight of expectation. The evidence laid out before the court was as compelling as the latest investigative series gracing the cover of Rolling Stone. Hotel surveillance footage, email correspondences, and the damning life insurance policy painted a portrait of a man driven to the brink by infidelity and financial desire. Defense attorney Miguel Torres, known for his advocacy as robust as the defense strategies outlined in John Grisham's legal thrillers, pleaded for leniency. He highlighted Peter's lack of criminal history and his role as a father, drawing a parallel to the public's sympathy for Martha Stewart, who had recently returned to the limelight after her own legal battles. The courtroom, with its charged atmosphere, could have been the set of a courtroom drama series, a stark contrast to the usual tranquility of the seaside town. Melanie's family, a constant presence in the gallery, clung to each other, their emotions as turbulent as the stormy season that had just passed. When the verdict was announced, the word guilty resonated through the room, definitive and irrevocable. The sentencing that followed was severe, as if to match the gravity of Peter's actions. The judge cited the premeditated nature of the crime, delivering a sentence that ensured Peter would spend the majority of his remaining years behind bars. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was reminiscent of the buzz surrounding the Live 8 concerts, which had taken place that same summer. Opinions on the verdict were divided. Some felt justice had been served, while others debated the complexities of the human heart and the concept of retribution. As the Vandermere case closed, the family left the courthouse to begin the arduous process of healing. The foundation established in Melanie's name promised to keep her memory alive, a testament to the enduring spirit of a life taken too soon. In the wake of the trial that captivated Cancun, life gradually resumed its rhythm. Maria Hernandez, the elderly beachcomber who had discovered Melanie Vandermere's body, returned to her daily search for treasures along the shore. The brief brush with the law had left an imprint on her, yet it became just another story in her long life, much like the tale she shared with her grandchildren. Tommy Walker, the Australian backpacker whose affair with Melanie had entangled him in the investigation, continued his global journey. However, the carefree spirit he once embodied seemed dimmed. The beaches of Cancun were replaced by new horizons, but his travel blog, now with a more reflective tone, occasionally hinted at the shadows of the past. The detectives who had worked tirelessly on the case, Alejandro Ruiz and Sofia Blanco, received commendations for their dedication. Their success in solving the case was discussed in law enforcement circles with the same respect as the latest advancements in forensic technology featured in journals like Forensic Magazine. Melanie's family, back in Omaha, sought to honor her memory through activism. The foundation they established focused on supporting victims of domestic violence, a mission that provided a channel for their grief and a legacy for Melanie. The foundation's work garnered attention, much like the social justice causes championed by celebrities at the Live 8 concerts that summer. The Vandermere case had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of marital bliss. It served as a narrative that echoed the complexities of human relationships explored in popular shows like Desperate Housewives, which dominated television screens at the time. As Cancun's palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze and the turquoise waters of the Gulf of Mexico continued to lap at the sandy beaches, the tragedy of Melanie Vandermere remained a poignant chapter in the city's history, a story of paradise lost to the destructive forces of jealousy and revenge. The tragic case of Melanie Vandermere reminds us that paradise can sometimes mask the darkest of human emotions. As we close this chapter of True Crime Case Files, we are left to ponder the fragility of life and the lengths to which a broken heart will go to seek retribution. Eleanor Jardian, a seemingly kind-hearted and gentle woman at the age of 77, was known for her nurturing nature and love for her family. Having retired as a children's librarian, she found solace in her passions for gardening and reading classic novels, cherishing the simple pleasures life had to offer. Despite her advancing age, Eleanor remained an active presence in her family, dedicating her time to supervising the lives of her stepchildren, Cynthia and Ben. Cynthia, the daughter of Eleanor's first husband, and Ben, the son of her late second husband, the renowned lawn care tycoon Bobby Jardian Jr., were the center of Eleanor's world. She seemingly ensured their well-being and happiness, shaping their lives with her wisdom, care, and sizable financial resources from her late husbands. August of 2009 was a time of tranquility for Tybee Island, a picturesque coastal town where Eleanor resided. The warm summer sun kissed the sandy beaches, inviting locals and tourists alike to indulge in the serene beauty of the Atlantic Ocean. The community thrived on its close-knit nature, with neighbors sharing stories on their porches and attending lively town gatherings. As the sun set on the island, Eleanor could often be found tending to her vibrant garden, a riot of colors and fragrances that served as a testament to her green thumb. Her love for literature spilled over into her surroundings, with quaint bookshelves adorning her cozy cottage, filled with timeless classics and well-worn paperbacks, particularly those of Joyce Lehman, her favorite novelist. In the wake of Eleanor's tragic murder, the tight-knit community would be left in shock and disbelief. The peaceful aura that had once protected Tybee Island was shattered, replaced by an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. As the investigation unfolds, we will delve deeper into the lives of Eleanor Jardian and those around her, peeling back the layers of secrets and deceit that led to her untimely demise. Stay tuned. We will uncover more shocking revelations and shed light on the dark underbelly of this seemingly peaceful family. On the morning of August 11, 2009, the tranquil shores of Tybee Island, Georgia were shattered by a chilling discovery. Eleanor Jardian, a beloved member of the secluded seaside community, met a tragic end as her dead body was found sprawled on the sandy beach. The shockwaves of this heinous crime reverberated through the tight-knit community, leaving its residents in a state of disbelief. The grim discovery was made by Patty O'Hurley, a local retiree who had made it a habit to take her leisurely morning walks along the shoreline. As Patty strolled along the beach, enjoying the gentle breeze and the sound of crashing waves, she stumbled upon a sight that would haunt her forever. There, lying in the sand, was the naked body of Eleanor Jardian. Patty's heart raced as she took in the gruesome scene before her. She immediately reached for her cell phone, trembling with shock, and dialed 911. The authorities were dispatched to the scene without delay, their sirens piercing the otherwise serene morning air. As news of the discovery spread like wildfire, Tybee Island was thrust into the spotlight. The peaceful community, once known for its picturesque beauty and serene atmosphere, was now the center of a chilling murder investigation. Reporters from local news outlets flocked to the scene, their cameras capturing the grim reality that had befallen this idyllic coastal town. The shock and grief that gripped Tybee Island were palpable. The community rallied together, offering support to Eleanor's family and vowing to find justice for their beloved neighbor. Candlelight vigils were held in her honor, with tearful residents coming together to remember the kind-hearted woman whose life had been cut short. As the investigation unfolded, the media frenzy surrounding the case intensified. News outlets across the state covered the story, speculating about possible motives and suspects. The town that was once known for its tranquility now found itself under the harsh glare of the true crime gaze. On that fateful morning of August 11th, 2009, the peaceful community of Tybee Island, Georgia, was shaken to its core when the naked and lifeless body of Eleanor Jardian, a beloved member of their close-knit society, was discovered on the beach. The shocking sight sent shockwaves of disbelief throughout the town, leaving its residents in a state of fear and confusion. Lead investigator Detective James Matthews, a seasoned veteran in the field of criminal investigation, arrived at the crime scene along with his partner, Officer Laura Linder. Their presence brought a sense of reassurance to the distraught community, as they knew that justice would be pursued relentlessly. The beach, once a symbol of relaxation and joy, had now transformed into a chilling crime scene. The sand, once golden and inviting, was now stained with the crimson evidence of a brutal murder. Eleanor had been ruthlessly shot to death, a fact that sent shockwaves through the hearts of the residents who had known her as a kind-hearted and gentle woman. With meticulous precision, Detective Matthews and Officer Linder began their investigation. Every inch of the crime scene was examined with utmost care, as they sought to uncover any clue that could lead them to the perpetrator. They combed through the sand, collecting samples and preserving any potential evidence that could shed light on this heinous crime. The forensic team was called in to assist with the investigation, utilizing state-of-the-art techniques to analyze the collected evidence. Fingerprints were meticulously lifted, DNA samples were carefully processed, and ballistics experts examined the bullet casings found near the crime scene. Every piece of evidence was crucial in piecing together the puzzle that would ultimately reveal the identity of Eleanor's killer. The investigation into Eleanor Jardian's murder would prove to be a challenging and complex endeavor, but the determination and unwavering commitment of Detective Matthews, Officer Linder, and the entire police force would not waver. They vowed to bring justice to Eleanor and restore peace to the shattered community. Ben Jardian, aged 41, emerged as the prime suspect in the shocking murder of Eleanor Jardian, his stepmother. Ben, known for his charismatic charm and smooth-talking nature, had always presented himself as a caring and devoted family member. However, as the investigation unfolded, a darker side of his character began to surface. Behind his affable exterior lay a web of secrets and resentment. Eleanor, in a twisted and manipulative move, had coerced Ben into a decades-long sexual relationship to secure his inheritance and substantial allowance. This revelation sent shockwaves through the small seaside community of Tybee Island, Georgia, where the murder took place. The police wasted no time in interrogating Ben, hoping to uncover the truth behind Eleanor's brutal demise. Detective James Matthews and his partner, Officer Laura Linder, skillfully probed Ben, their questions piercing through his carefully constructed facade. The interrogation room buzzed with tension as the investigators sought to unravel the complex mix of emotions that Ben displayed. Ben's response to the interrogation was a delicate balance of anger, calmness, and evasion. He vehemently denied any involvement in Eleanor's murder, claiming to have been at a local coffee shop during the time of her death. The investigators painstakingly cross-referenced his alibi, meticulously examining CCTV footage and interviewing witnesses from the coffee shop. However, they found no concrete evidence to either confirm or refute his claims. As the investigation progressed, the media frenzy surrounding the case intensified. Local newspapers, such as the Tybee Island Times, splashed headlines about the murder across their front pages, captivating the attention of the community. The police continued their relentless pursuit of justice, leaving no stone unturned in their quest for the truth. They meticulously combed through phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies, piecing together a timeline of events leading up to Eleanor's murder. Every detail, no matter how seemingly insignificant, was scrutinized in their pursuit of justice. Cynthia Jardian, aged 45, the wife of Ben Jardian and stepdaughter of the late Eleanor Jardian from her first husband, emerged as the second suspect in the shocking murder case that gripped the small community of Tybee Island, Georgia. Known for her elegance and refined taste, Cynthia presented herself as a supportive spouse to her husband and loving mother to their daughter, Aroma. However, behind her polished exterior lay a web of secrets and a calculating, ambitious nature. According to the police investigation, Cynthia was forced into a sexual relationship with Eleanor, her stepmother, as a means to maintain her family's financial status. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community as the residents struggled to come to terms with the dark secrets that had been unearthed within the Jardians family. During the intense interrogation, Cynthia's demeanor fluctuated between anger, calmness, and denial. She vehemently denied any involvement in the murder, insisting that she loved Eleanor like a mother and would never harm her. However, the evidence gathered by the police paints a different picture. Investigators uncovered a series of incriminating emails exchanged between Cynthia and Eleanor, discussing their illicit relationship, including graphic descriptions of how Eleanor wanted her stepdaughter to perform sexually. These emails, along with other pieces of evidence, raised suspicions about Cynthia's motive for murder. As the investigation into Cynthia Jardian's involvement in the murder unfolds, the community anxiously awaited answers. Would justice be served, or will the secrets of Tybee Island continue to haunt its residents? In the ongoing investigation into the shocking murder of Eleanor Jardian, a new suspect emerged. Harold Beechers, a seemingly friendly neighbor of the victim, became the focus of intense scrutiny. Known for his outgoing personality and close bond with Eleanor, Harold's involvement in this perplexing case raised eyebrows within the tight-knit community of Tybee Island, Georgia. Harold, a middle-aged man with a penchant for Hawaiian shirts, had always been a familiar face in the neighborhood. He was often seen engaging in friendly conversations with Eleanor, sharing gardening tips and discussing the latest bestsellers. However, beneath his amiable facade, Harold harbored a secret sexual obsession with the elderly woman. The police, armed with newfound evidence from the letters discovered in a secluded cove, turned their attention to Harold. They sought to unravel the depths of his infatuation and determine if it played a role in Eleanor's untimely demise. The interrogation room was tense as Detective James Matthews and Officer Laura Linder questioned Harold, hoping to extract the truth from him. During the interrogation, Harold's emotions were clearly in turmoil. Anger, guilt, and confusion were etched across his face as he struggled to provide coherent answers. The investigators pressed him on the nature of his relationship with Eleanor, delving into the depths of his obsession. Harold's voice trembled as he admitted to the infatuation he had nurtured in secret, but vehemently denied any involvement in her murder. As the questioning continued, Harold's demeanor shifted. He became increasingly defensive, lashing out at the detectives and insisting on his innocence. The investigation team meticulously probed for inconsistencies, seeking to determine if Harold's obsession had driven him to commit this heinous crime. The weight of suspicion hung heavy in the air as the detectives scrutinized his every word and gesture. In the days following the interrogation, the police tirelessly combed through Harold's background, searching for any evidence that could link him to the murder. They interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances, piecing together a profile of the man behind the friendly facade. The media, hungry for details, began speculating on Harold's possible involvement, sensationalizing the case and fueling public interest. The community of Tybee Island remained on edge. The truth behind Eleanor Jardian's murder remained elusive, and the search for justice intensified. The police, determined to bring closure to this tragic case, left no stone unturned in their relentless pursuit of the truth. In a stunning twist, the investigation into the murder of Eleanor Jardian took a dramatic turn, revealing Cynthia Jardian, the stepdaughter of the victim, as the mastermind behind this heinous crime. The motive behind Cynthia's actions was a toxic level of exhaustion and her drive for wealth. This shocking revelation sent shockwaves through the close-knit community of Tybee Island, Georgia, where the murder took place. Cynthia Jardian, a woman of elegance and refined taste, had long portrayed herself as a supportive spouse to her husband Ben and loving mother to her daughter, Aroma. However, beneath her polished exterior lay a dark and manipulative nature. The investigation uncovered that Cynthia had been forced into a sexual relationship with Eleanor, her stepmother and main financial provider, as a means to maintain her family's financial status. This disturbing revelation sheds light on the intricate web of deceit and manipulation that surrounded Eleanor's murder. The police diligently pursued this lead, and it was the discovery of a hidden stash of letters in a secluded cove that provided a breakthrough in the case. These letters exposed the secret anger Cynthia had towards Eleanor. The letters revealed her deep-seated hatred for Eleanor, whom she loathed for her voracious sexual appetite, sometimes forcing Cynthia to have sex with her 3 or even 4 times a day. Cynthia saw Eleanor's sizable estate as the only way to secure her family's financial future. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Cynthia's actions were not driven by a momentary lapse in judgment, but rather a calculated plan to eliminate Eleanor. The police gathered evidence, piecing together the puzzle to bring Cynthia to justice. The interrogation of Cynthia revealed a mix of anger, calmness, and denial as she attempted to evade responsibility for her actions. Finally, the authorities were able to identify Cynthia Jardian as the prime suspect and subsequently arrested her. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community as the residents grappled with the realization that one of their own was capable of such a heinous act. As the trial began, the community of Tybee Island, Georgia, remained in a state of disbelief. The once idyllic seaside community had been forever changed by this tragic event, and as the trial unfolded, the truth behind this shocking crime will be revealed, bringing closure to a community in mourning. The highly anticipated trial of Cynthia Jardian, the mastermind behind the shocking murder of Eleanor Jardian, took place in the small coastal town of Tybee Island, Georgia. The courtroom was packed with curious onlookers, eager to witness the conclusion of this gripping true crime case. Prosecutor Sarah McPherson, known for her tenacious pursuit of justice, presented a compelling argument against Cynthia. She meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a vivid picture of Cynthia's greed and calculated actions. McPherson highlighted the disturbing nature of the murder plot, emphasizing how Cynthia's desire for wealth and power drove her to orchestrate the heinous crime. In her opening statement, McPherson described the chilling discovery of Eleanor's naked body on the beach, sending shockwaves through the tight-knit community. She recounted how the police swiftly responded to the crime scene, collecting crucial evidence that would later link Cynthia to the murder. Throughout the trial, McPherson called upon witnesses who had been entangled in the web of deceit surrounding Eleanor's murder. These witnesses, including Patty O'Hurley, the retiree who stumbled upon the crime scene, and the local fisherman who discovered the hidden stash of letters, provided crucial testimony that solidified the prosecution's case. Defense attorney Marley Hobart Greaves, known for his ability to sway juries, presented a different narrative. He argued that Cynthia's actions were driven by sexual exhaustion and emotional turmoil from her coerced relationship with the victim, painting her as a victim of circumstance rather than a cold-blooded murderer. Hobart Greaves pleaded for leniency, urging the jury to consider the toll that Eleanor's manipulation had taken on Cynthia's mental state. As the trial progressed, the courtroom was filled with tension and emotion. The media circus surrounding the trial only added to the intensity, with reporters from local news outlets capturing every moment for the public to devour. After days of compelling arguments and emotional testimonies, the jury retired to deliberate. The verdict, delivered with a mix of relief and disappointment, found Cynthia guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a cacophony of reactions, gasps of disbelief from Cynthia's supporters and tears of relief from Eleanor's family and friends. In a final act of justice, the judge sentenced Cynthia to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The impact of the verdict reverberated through the community, forever changing the lives of those involved. Tybee Island, once known for its idyllic beaches and close-knit community, would forever be marked by the tragic events of August 2009. After the highly publicized trial, The lives of those involved in the shocking murder of Eleanor Jardian took a dramatic turn. Cynthia, now incarcerated, would spend the rest of her life behind bars, reflecting on the choices that led to her downfall. Ben, Eleanor's stepson and Cynthia's husband, faced public scrutiny and the weight of his complicity in the crime. Cynthia's daughter, Aroma, was left to navigate the aftermath of her mother's actions, forever changed by the revelation of her family's dark secrets. Meanwhile, the police continued their tireless pursuit of justice, ensuring that no stone was left unturned. Detective James Matthews and Officer Laura Linder, the lead investigators in the case, remained committed to uncovering any lingering mysteries surrounding Eleanor's murder. Their dedication to the truth brought solace to the community, knowing that justice had been served. The impact of this shocking crime rippled through Tybee Island, leaving a lasting mark on the close-knit community. The residents, once known for their tranquility, found themselves grappling with the harsh reality that darkness can lurk even in the most idyllic of places. And thus, we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files. The story of Eleanor Jardian's murder serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most idyllic communities. Michael Marshall Tucker was a 47-year-old man who lived in Pacifica, California. He worked as a software engineer, which means he made programs for computers. He was really good at his job and came up with many new ideas. Marshall was known for working hard and always trying his best. Marshall had a happy family. He was married to Lainey, and they had 2 children. Activia was 14 years old, and Marlboro was 10 years old. The family lived in a nice house near the beach. Marshall loved his family very much and always spent time with them. He often took them hiking on the weekends. They went to places like Maury Point and the Sweeney Ridge Trail. Marshall liked taking pictures of nature, especially the ocean and sunsets. He had a camera and always carried it with him on hikes. Marshall went to Stanford University, where he met his best friend, Nate Harrison. Nate and Marshall stayed close friends even after college. They both worked at the same tech company, which made computer programs for big businesses. In his free time, Marshall liked to read books about technology and science. He also liked watching shows like The X-Files and Star Trek Voyager with his kids. People who knew Marshall said he was kind and helpful. His friends and co-workers admired him for being smart and caring. He always had a smile on his face and was ready to help anyone in need. At work, he was excited about a new project that he thought would change how people use computers. Marshall and his team were working on this project, hoping to present it to the company leaders soon. In the days before his death, Marshall was busy but happy. He talked about the family hiking trip they had planned for the weekend. They were going to visit Point Reyes National Seashore. Marshall was also helping Activia with her science project about marine life. He spent time with Marlboro building a model rocket. Marshall was looking forward to many things. He dreamed of one day starting his own tech company. He also wanted to travel with his family to places like Yellowstone National Park and the Grand Canyon. Marshall Tucker was a good man with big dreams and a loving family. His sudden and tragic death left a huge hole in the lives of those who loved him. On March 23, 2003, the weather in Pacifica, California, was cloudy and cool. At about 8 o'clock a.m., Activia Tucker, Marshall's 14-year-old daughter, woke up and went downstairs to the living room. She was expecting to see her dad getting ready for their planned hike. Instead, she found a terrifying scene that would change her life forever. The living room was a mess. Furniture was turned over, and things were scattered everywhere. In the middle of the room, Activia saw her father, Marshall, lying on the floor. There was blood around his head, and he wasn't moving. Activia screamed and called out for her mother, Lainey. Lainey Tucker rushed into the room. She saw Marshall and immediately ran to the phone to call 911. Her hands were shaking, and her voice was trembling as she told the operator what had happened. She said it looked like someone had broken into their house and hurt her husband. The police arrived quickly. Officers were on the scene within 10 minutes. Officer Mark Stevens was the first to enter the house. He found Lainey crying and holding Activia, who was still in shock. Stevens asked them to step outside while he checked the rest of the house. Officer Stevens noticed the living room looked like someone had tried to make it appear as if a robbery had occurred, but there were too many things that didn't add up. Valuable items, like the TV and Lainey's jewelry, were left untouched. Marshall's body was lying near the fireplace. Next to him was a heavy ornate candlestick that was covered in blood. It was clear that this was the weapon used to kill him. The detectives began their work. taking pictures of the scene and collecting evidence. They dusted for fingerprints and looked for any clues that might tell them who had done this. Outside, Lainey and Activia were talking to each other. Lainey was trying to stay calm for her daughter, but it was clear that she was devastated. Activia was crying and kept asking why someone would hurt her dad. The discovery of Marshall Tucker's body was the start of a complicated and tragic investigation. The peaceful life of the Tucker family was shattered, and the search for the truth had just begun. When the police arrived at the Tucker home on March 23, 2003, they quickly secured the scene. The lead investigators, Detectives Laura Grant and Michael Chua, both experienced and respected, began their work. Detective Grant was 45 years old, with short brown hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Detective Chua, 50, was tall and lean, known for his sharp intuition. The living room was a chaotic scene. Furniture was overturned, drawers were pulled out, and items were scattered all over the floor. It looked like someone had tried to make it seem like a robbery. However, some valuable items were left untouched, which made the detectives suspicious. A flat-screen TV, Lainey's expensive jewelry, and a new laptop were still in place. Marshall's body was found near the fireplace. His head was badly injured, and there was blood on an ornate candlestick nearby. The candlestick, a heavy piece from their mantel, was clearly the murder weapon. Marshall's wounds showed he had been hit multiple times, indicating a violent struggle. Detective Grant and Detective Chua started their investigation by looking closely at the crime scene. They took photos and collected evidence. They also dusted for fingerprints on the candlestick and other surfaces. Forensic experts arrived to help, wearing white suits to avoid contaminating the scene. They collected blood samples and fibers that might provide clues. The detectives interviewed Lainey and Olivia outside the house. Lainey, still in shock, tried to explain what had happened. She said she had been asleep and didn't hear anything unusual. Olivia, who found her father, was too shaken to speak much. Officer Mark Stevens, who was the first to arrive, helped keep them calm and took their initial statements. Detective Grant noted that there were no signs of forced entry. The door was intact and the windows were not broken. This suggested that the killer either had a key or was let in by someone inside. This made the detectives think that the killer might be someone Marshall knew. The police used special lights to look for hidden evidence, like footprints or blood traces. They also used a device to check for any recent calls or messages on Marshall's and Lainey's phones. They hoped this could lead them to more clues about what happened. The investigation team worked through the day, piecing together what they could from the chaotic scene. They collected all the evidence carefully, knowing that each piece might be crucial to solving the case. Marshall Tucker's murder was a shocking and tragic event in the peaceful town of Pacifica. The detectives knew they had a tough job ahead to uncover the truth and bring justice to Marshall and his grieving family. Lainey Tucker, Marshall's wife, was the first suspect. Lainey was 41 years old, a creative and quiet person. She loved writing adult fiction, especially stories with violent and intense themes. Over the past year, Lainey became deeply involved in a fantasy world she created. Her latest story was about a twisted love affair, and her friends noticed that she started mixing up her fantasy with real life. The police found Lainey's behavior odd. She seemed distant and sometimes confused about what was real. Detective Grant and Detective Chua brought her in for questioning the day after Marshall was found. They asked her about her relationship with Marshall and what she was doing the night of the murder. Lainey told them she had been asleep and didn't hear anything. She said she loved Marshall and couldn't understand why someone would want to hurt him. The detectives noticed that she seemed nervous, often fidgeting and avoiding eye contact. They asked her about her writing and if she ever felt like her stories affected her real life. Lainey insisted that her writing was just a hobby and had nothing to do with Marshall's death. The detectives also looked into Lainey's recent activities. They found out that she had been acting strangely at her writing group meetings. Her friends said she talked a lot about her story and seemed obsessed with the idea of a dramatic and tragic love. Some of them even wondered if she was getting too involved in her fiction. During the interrogation, Lainey's answers were often vague. She didn't have a clear alibi for the night of the murders, saying only that she had taken some sleeping pills and gone to bed early. The detectives asked if anyone else had a key to their house. Lainey said only she and Marshall had keys, which made them even more suspicious. The detectives also checked Lainey's phone records. They found several text messages and emails that showed her growing obsession with her story. One message to a friend said, "Sometimes I feel like my characters are more real than my own life. This made the detectives think that Laney might have blurred the lines between her fantasy and reality. Laney's reaction to the interrogation was mostly calm, but she seemed tired and stressed. The detectives couldn't tell that she was hiding something or just overwhelmed by the situation. They decided to keep an eye on her while they continued their investigation, looking for more clues that could either prove her guilt or clear her name. Laney Tucker's behavior and her intense connection to her fictional world made her a prime suspect in Marshall's murder, but the detectives needed more evidence to know for sure if she was responsible. Nate Harrison, Marshall's best friend, was the second suspect. Nate was 39 years old and worked with Marshall at the same tech company. He was outgoing, friendly, and known for his easygoing nature. Nate often visited the Tucker household and was considered part of the family. He shared Marshall's passion for technology and innovation, and they had been close friends since their days at Stanford University. Detective Grant and Detective Chua brought Nate in for questioning. They wanted to understand his relationship with Marshall and Laney better. Nate seemed surprised by the suspicion but cooperated fully with the police. He told them about his long friendship with Marshall and how they worked together on many projects. Nate explained that he had been at home the night of the murder working on a new software project. He provided the detectives with the name of a colleague who could confirm he had been online, working late into the night. Nate seemed genuinely upset about Marshall's death and couldn't believe that someone would kill his best friend. The detectives asked Nate about his relationship with Laney. He admitted that he and Laney had become closer over the past year, especially as she struggled with her writing and mental health. Nate said he often tried to support her and keep her grounded when she got too involved in her fictional world. When asked if he had any romantic feelings for Laney, Nate hesitated but then confessed that he did have feelings for her. He quickly added that he never acted on them and that his loyalty was always to Marshall. The detectives found this interesting and wondered if Nate's feelings for Laney could be a motive. The detectives also checked Nate's phone records and computer activity. They found that Nate had sent many messages to Laney, encouraging her writing and offering emotional support. There was nothing directly suspicious in the messages, but the frequency of their communication raised some questions. Nate's demeanor during the interrogation was mostly calm, but he appeared anxious at times, especially when discussing Laney. He seemed genuinely hurt by the loss of his friend and worried about Laney's well-being. The detectives could not determine if his anxiety was due to grief or something more. Nate's strong friendship with Marshall and his unspoken love for Laney made him a complicated figure in the investigation. The detectives needed more evidence to determine if Nate's feelings had anything to do with Marshall's murder, or if he was simply a supportive friend caught in a tragic situation. Nate Harrison's deep connection to both Marshall and Laney made him an important part of the investigation, and the detectives continued to probe for more details that could clarify his role in the unfolding mystery. On March 27, 2003, 4 days after Marshall Tucker's murder, the weather in Pacifica, California, was rainy and cold. Detective Grant and Detective Chua were at the police station when they received a call about new evidence. An officer had found something unusual while going through Laney's phone records and computer files. The new evidence was a series of emails and text messages between Laney and Nate. These messages were different from the ones the detectives had seen before. They were more personal and hinted at something troubling. In one message, Laney wrote to Nate, "I can't stop thinking about my story. It feels so real. Sometimes I wonder if the only way to end it is to make it real." The detectives felt a chill reading the message. It seemed like Laney was losing her grip on reality. Another message from Nate to Laney said, "If this is what you think has to happen, I'm here for you. Just be careful." This message made the detectives suspect that Nate might have known about Laney's plan to kill Marshall. Detective Grant and Detective Chua quickly went to Laney's house to talk to her again. Laney was cooperative but looked tired and stressed. The detectives showed her the messages and asked what they meant. Laney broke down in tears and said she didn't know what was real anymore. She said that she had been so wrapped up in her fantasy world that she felt like it was taking over her life. While Laney was talking, Detective Chua received a call from the forensic team. They had found traces of Nate's fingerprints on the candlestick, the murder weapon. This new evidence was crucial. It showed that Nate had been in the house and touched the weapon. The detectives went to Nate's house to confront him. It was still raining heavily, making the scene feel even more intense. Nate was shocked to see the detectives but let them in. They showed him the messages and told him about the fingerprints. Nate tried to explain that he had been at the Tucker house many times and could have touched the candlestick before, but the detectives didn't believe him. Detective Grant and Detective Chua arrested Nate on suspicion of being involved in Marshall's murder. Nate protested, saying he was only trying to help Laney, but the evidence was strong against him. The new evidence changed the direction of the investigation. The detectives now believed that both Laney and Nate were involved in Marshall's death. They continued to dig deeper, looking for more clues to piece together the full story. The discovery of the messages and fingerprints brought new light to the case, making it clear that the investigation was far from over. The detectives were determined to find the truth and bring justice for Marshall Tucker. Anna Louise Reed was the third suspect. Anna Louise was 24 years old and lived next door to the Tucker family. She was a social worker known for her compassion and protective nature. She often spent time with Laney, offering support during difficult times. Rumors of a romantic relationship between Anna Louise and Laney added a layer of complexity to the investigation. Detective Grant and Detective Chua decided to bring Anna Louise in for questioning. She seemed surprised but agreed to cooperate. Anna Louise described her friendship with Laney and how she often tried to help her through her emotional struggles. She admitted they were very close but denied any romantic involvement. Anna Louise told the detectives she had been at home the night of the murder, reading a book and watching TV. She said she heard nothing unusual and didn't know anything about Marshall's death until Laney called her the next morning. The detectives checked her alibi, looking for any inconsistencies. During the interrogation, Anna Louise appeared calm and composed. She answered all the questions without hesitation. However, the detectives noticed she seemed particularly concerned about Laney's well-being. When asked about Laney's mental state, Anna Louise said Laney had been struggling with reality and often got lost in her fictional world. The detectives asked Anna Louise if she knew about Laney's plans to kill Marshall. She denied knowing anything and said she would have tried to stop her if she did. The detectives found it hard to believe that someone as close to Laney as Anna Louise wouldn't have noticed something was wrong. The detectives also checked Anna Louise's phone records. They found numerous text messages between her and Laney. Most messages were about everyday things, but some hinted at Laney's emotional turmoil. In one message, Laney wrote, "Sometimes I feel like my stories are more real than my life." Anna Louise replied, "You need to focus on reality. I'm here for you." Detective Grant and Detective Chua continued to question Anna Louise, trying to find any clue that might link her to the crime. They asked about her relationship with Marshall and if she ever felt jealous of him. Anna Louise said she respected Marshall and would never do anything to harm him. Despite Anna Louise's calm demeanor and seemingly solid alibi, the detectives were not entirely convinced of her innocence. They believed she might know more than she was letting on. They decided to keep a close eye on her while they continued their investigation. Anna Louise Reed's involvement in the Tucker family's lives and her close relationship with Laney made her a key figure in the case. The detectives knew they needed more evidence to determine her role, if any, in Marshall's murder. On March 30, 2003, a week after Marshall Tucker's murder, the weather was clear and cool in Pacifica, California. Detectives Grant and Chua received a crucial tip from the forensic team. They discovered a series of incriminating messages on Laney's phone that linked Nate Harrison directly to the crime. These messages showed Nate's encouragement and guidance, proving he knew about Laney's plan to kill Marshall. Laney Tucker, 41, was the murderer. She had become obsessed with a twisted fantasy world she created, believing that Marshall's death was necessary to immortalize their love story. Laney's mental state had deteriorated to the point where she couldn't distinguish between fiction and reality. Her obsession with her violent stories drove her to bludgeon Marshall with an ornate candlestick from their living room. Detectives Grant and Chua realized that Nate Harrison, 39, was not just an innocent bystander. Nate had harbored secret feelings for Laney, and instead of preventing the murder, he manipulated the situation to make sure it happened. Nate believed that with Marshall out of the way, he could finally be with Laney. He provided Laney with the means to carry out the murder and helped her stage the burglary scene. The detectives reviewed the evidence and planned their approach. On the evening of March 30, they drove to Nate's house. The sky was clear, and the air was crisp. They knocked on Nate's door, and he answered, looking surprised to see them. Detective Grant told him they needed to talk about new evidence in the case. Inside, they showed Nate the messages and explained what they had found. Nate's face turned pale, and he tried to deny everything, but the evidence was too strong. Detective Chua calmly placed Nate under arrest for his involvement in Marshall's murder. Nate looked shocked and defeated as the handcuffs clicked around his wrist. Laney was also arrested at her home. She didn't resist and seemed almost relieved. When the detectives told her they knew the full story, she broke down, admitting that she believed Marshall's death was a tragic necessity for their love story. Marshall's family was devastated by the news of Laney and Nate's betrayal. They couldn't understand how the people closest to Marshall could do such a thing. The arrest of Laney and Nate brought a mix of grief and relief. They were heartbroken over the loss of Marshall, but relieved that justice would be served. The clear skies of March 30, 2003, marked a turning point in the case. The detectives had solved the mystery, bringing closure to Marshall Tucker's family and the community of Pacifica. The trial of Laney Tucker and May Harrison began on June 15, 2003, in the Pacifica Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with reporters from local news stations like KTVU and the Pacifica Tribune. The public was eager to see justice served for the murder of Marshall Tucker. The prosecutor, Samantha Hong, 45, was known for her tough and determined nature. She presented a strong case against Laney and Nate, showing the jury the incriminating messages and evidence from the crime scene. Klein argued that Laney's delusional fantasy had led her to murder her husband, and that Nate had manipulated her to fulfill his own selfish desires. On the defense side was Robert Hayes, 50, a seasoned attorney known for his calm demeanor and sharp mind. He argued that Laney was mentally unstable and couldn't fully comprehend her actions. Hayes claimed that Nate's involvement was merely that of a misguided friend trying to help. He emphasized that Nate never directly participated in the murder. During the trial, the victim's family watched with heavy hearts. Marshall's parents, siblings, and children were present every day, hoping for justice. They listened intently as witnesses testified about Laney's erratic behavior and Nate's secret love for her. The emotional toll was evident as they struggled with the betrayal by people they had trusted. After weeks of testimony and arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 days. On July 1, 2003, they reached a verdict. Laney Tucker was found guilty of first-degree murder. Nate Harrison was found guilty of being an accessory to murder. The courtroom was silent as the verdicts were read. Judge Evelyn Carter, 55, delivered the sentences. Laney was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Nate received a 25-year sentence for his role in the crime. Both sentences reflected the severity of their actions and the impact on Marshall's family. The sentencing brought mixed feelings among the victim's family and friends. While they were relieved that Laney and Nate were held accountable, the harsh reality of losing Marshall forever weighed heavily on them. They felt the sense of justice, but the pain of their loss remained. The trial and sentencing had a significant impact on the community of Pacifica. People discussed the case in cafes and on local radio stations like KGO. It served as a grim reminder of how quickly life could change and the importance of mental health awareness. The story of Marshall Tucker's murder and the subsequent trial left a lasting impression on everyone involved. It was a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and the search for justice in a quiet coastal town. After the trial, the community of Pacifica tried to return to normal. The events have left a deep scar, but people were determined to move forward. The Tucker family, especially, faced the challenge of rebuilding their lives without Marshall. Laney Tucker, now serving her life sentence, was transferred to the California Institution for Women. She received psychiatric treatment for her mental health issues. Laney spent her days writing and attending therapy sessions. She expressed remorse for her actions but knew she would never be able to undo the damage she had caused. Nate Harrison, sentenced to 25 years, was incarcerated at San Quentin State Prison. He struggled with guilt and regret, understanding the gravity of his manipulation. Nate's family distanced themselves from him, unable to comprehend his actions. It used his time in prison to reflect on his mistakes, participating in rehabilitation programs and counseling. The community of Pacifica held a memorial for Marshall Tucker every year on the anniversary of his death. Friends, family, and colleagues gathered to remember him and celebrate his life. The memorial became a symbol of the town's resilience and unity. Life in Pacifica slowly returned to normal, but the memory of Marshall Tucker and the lessons from his tragic death remained. The community, united by their shared grief, became stronger and more supportive of one another, determined to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Larry Harrison was a 42-year-old man who managed a popular Applebee's in Rochester, Minnesota. He was known for being warm and friendly. Larry was a big fan of the Minnesota Vikings and loved watching their games. He lived with his wife, Lauren, and their teenage son. They had a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood where they had lived for many years. Larry's family meant everything to him. He and Lauren had been married for over 15 years. They met in college and quickly fell in love. Larry was a devoted father who always found time for his son Brian, whether it was helping with homework or coaching his little league team. Larry's friendly nature made him a well-loved figure in Rochester. He often volunteered at the local food bank and participated in community cleanup events. In the days leading up to his death, Larry was busy planning a community event at his restaurant to celebrate the end of the football season. He wanted to bring people together for a big feast, featuring everyone's favorite dishes and, of course, the game highlights. The Super Bowl had just taken place on February 1, 2015, with the New England Patriots defeating the Seattle Seahawks. Larry was excited about the event and had been working extra hours to make sure everything was perfect. Larry also had personal plans. He was looking forward to a family trip to the Mall of America, where they planned to visit the amusement park and shop at their favorite stores. Larry was a simple man who found joy in everyday moments with his family and friends. In summary, Larry Harrison was a man who cared deeply about his family, his community, and his work. He was loved by many and had a bright future ahead of him, full of dreams and plans. His untimely death was a shock to everyone who knew him, leaving a void that could never be filled. On the morning of February 8, 2015, at around 7:30 a.m., Lauren Harrison found her husband, Larry, dead in their kitchen. It was a cold and snowy day in Rochester, Minnesota. Lauren had woken up early to prepare breakfast. As she walked into the kitchen, she was met with a horrifying scene. Larry's body lay on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. He had been stabbed multiple times. The sight was shocking and terrifying. Lauren immediately screamed for help. Her loud cries woke up the neighbors, who quickly rushed over to see what was happening. One of the neighbors, Mary Benedictus, who lived next door, ran over to check on Lauren. When she saw the gruesome scene, she quickly called 911. Mary described feeling a mix of fear and disbelief. She had known Larry for years and couldn't believe something so horrible could happen. It was like a nightmare, she later told the local news. Larry was such a kind man. I couldn't understand why anyone would do this to him. The 911 operators stayed on the phone with Mary, trying to keep her calm while emergency services were on their way. Lauren, in shock and grief, could barely speak. She kept repeating Larry's name, unable to comprehend the brutal reality before her. Within minutes, the police and paramedics arrived. The first officer on the scene noted the look of absolute horror on Lauren's face. He tried to comfort her while securing the area. Paramedics quickly assessed Larry, but it was clear that he had been dead for some time. News of Larry's death spread quickly through the small town. Local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, reported the shocking incident. Neighbors and friends gathered outside the Harrison home, exchanging whispers and offering support to Lauren and her son. The local community, which had been buzzing with post-Super Bowl excitement just a week earlier, was now in a state of shock and mourning. The discovery of Larry Harrison's body marked the beginning of a tragic and complex investigation, one that would reveal dark secrets and shake the community to its core. The Rochester Police Department arrived quickly at the Harrison home on the morning of February 8, 2015. They secured the area and tried to comfort a shocked and distraught Lauren Harrison. The paramedics soon arrived and confirmed that Larry Harrison was dead. Detective Jonathan Gustafson, a veteran with over 20 years on the force, and Detective Sarah Brown, known for her sharp instincts, were assigned to lead the investigation. They arrived shortly after the initial officers. Detective Gustafson was known for his methodical approach, while Detective Brown had a keen eye for detail. The crime scene in the kitchen was gruesome. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, on the countertops, and even splattered on the walls. Larry had been stabbed multiple times, indicating a violent struggle. The detectives noted that there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Larry might have known his attacker. Detectives Gustafson and Brown started their investigation by examining the body. Larry had defensive wounds on his arms, which meant he tried to fight off his attacker. The detectives then began to collect evidence. They took fingerprints, blood samples, and photographs of the scene. They'd also collected the knife used in the attack, which was found near Larry's body. Forensic experts were called in to help analyze the evidence. They used tools like luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and UV lights to find any traces of bodily fluids. They also used a technique called bloodstain pattern analysis to understand how the attack happened. This helped them piece together the events leading up to Larry's death. The detectives interviewed Lauren, who was still in shock. She couldn't provide much information at first, but she did mention hearing a noise in the kitchen during the night. The police also talked to the neighbors, including Mary Benedictus, who had called 911. Mary didn't see or hear anything unusual that night, which added to the mystery. The local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, covered the story extensively. The community was in shock. Everyone wanted to know who could have done such a horrible thing to Larry, a well-loved and respected member of their town. The police set up a tip line, hoping someone might come forward with information. As the investigation progressed, the detectives knew they had to act quickly. The evidence pointed to someone close to Larry, but they needed more proof to make an arrest. The crime scene was just the beginning of a complicated and heartbreaking case. The first person the police investigated was Lauren Harrison, Larry's wife. Lauren was 38 years old and worked as a nurse at the local Mayo Clinic. She was known for her caring nature, but the detectives had to look closely at everyone connected to Larry. Lauren had been married to Larry for over 15 years. On the surface, they seemed like a happy couple, but the investigation revealed some troubling secrets. Lauren was having sex with Garmin Wilson, her 18-year-old son's best friend. This affair put a strain on her marriage and made her a suspect in Larry's murder. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Lauren in for questioning. The interview took place at the Rochester Police Department. Lauren appeared nervous and upset, which was understandable given the circumstances. The detectives asked her about her relationship with Larry and if there were any problems in their marriage. Lauren admitted to the affair with Garmin, but insisted she still loved Larry and would never hurt him. The detectives pressed Lauren about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. She claimed she was at home, asleep, and didn't hear anything unusual until she found Larry's body the next morning. The detectives noted her emotional responses, which seemed genuine, but they couldn't rule her out as a suspect just yet. They also asked Lauren about any arguments she and Larry might have had recently. She mentioned that they had been fighting about her affair, but she denied that these arguments ever got physical. Lauren's responses were consistent, but the detectives needed more evidence to determine her involvement in Larry's death. Throughout the investigation, Lauren maintained her innocence. She was cooperative but clearly devastated by Larry's death. Her emotions ranged from sadness to anger as she tried to come to terms with what had happened. The detectives had to consider every possibility, but Lauren's cooperation and the lack of direct evidence against her made it difficult to build a strong case. The police also looked into Lauren's phone records and financial statements. They found no suspicious activity that could link her directly to the murder. However, the affair with Garmin Wilson remained a significant point of interest. The detectives decided to bring Garmin in for questioning as well, hoping he might shed more light on the situation. As the police continued to investigate, they realized they needed to look at other potential suspects. Lauren's affair was a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it didn't provide all the answers. The detectives knew they had to keep digging to find the truth behind Larry Harrison's tragic death. With the discovery of Lauren's affair, the police turned their attention to Garmin Wilson, the 18-year-old best friend of Larry's son and Lauren's secret lover. Garmin was a high school senior and part-time mechanic. He was well-liked and charismatic, but his relationship with Lauren put him in a complicated situation. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Garmin in for questioning on February 9, 2015. The interview took place at the Rochester Police Department. Garmin appeared nervous but cooperative. The detectives asked him about his relationship with Lauren and how it might have affected Larry. Garmin admitted to having sex with Lauren, saying it started a few months ago. He insisted that he had no problems with Larry and that Larry never knew about the affair. Garmin claimed he had been home on the night of the murder, working on a car in his garage. His alibi seemed plausible, but the detectives needed to verify it. The police also questioned Garmin about his feelings toward Larry. Garmin described Larry as a father figure and said he admired him. He was adamant that he had no reason to harm Larry and was deeply saddened by his death. Garmin's emotions appeared genuine, but the detectives couldn't ignore the affair and its potential impact. To check Garmin's alibi, the detectives visited his home and garage. They found the car he claimed to have been working on and interviewed his parents, who confirmed that Garmin was home that night. The alibi held up, but the detectives remained cautious. Detectives Gustafson and Brown also looked into Garmin's phone records and social media. They found many graphic sexts and naked pictures sent between Garmin and Lauren, but nothing that suggested Garmin was involved in the murder. The text showed a sexual relationship, but there were no threats or plans to harm Larry. Garmin's responses during the interrogation were calm and consistent. He showed genuine concern for Lauren and her son, and his cooperation with the police helped his case. However, the detectives still considered him a suspect due to his close relationship with Lauren and the potential motive stemming from the affair. The investigation into Garman revealed no direct evidence linking him to Larry's murder. His alibi and the lack of incriminating messages made it difficult for the police to build a case against him. While Garman remained a person of interest, the detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to either confirm or clear his involvement. As the police continued their investigation, they realized Garman's involvement in the affair complicated the case, but it also highlighted the tangled relationships within the Harrison household. On February 10, 2015, just 2 days after Larry Harrison's murder, a heavy snowstorm hit Rochester, Minnesota. Despite the harsh weather, the police continued their investigation. That afternoon, Detective Sarah Brown discovered a crucial piece of evidence in an unexpected place. While searching through the house again, Detective Brown decided to take a closer look in the bedroom of Margaret Smith, Lauren's mother. Margaret, 64, lived with the Harrison family and had a history of mental health issues. Detective Brown found a series of hidden letters in Margaret's room. These letters were shocking and disturbing. The letters were addressed to Larry and were sexually explicit. They revealed that Margaret had a deep, unhealthy obsession with her son-in-law. She believed Larry was the reincarnation of her late husband, Edgar. This discovery changed the direction of the investigation dramatically. Detectives Brown and Gustafson immediately focused their attention on Margaret. They were stunned by the content of the letters. It was clear that Margaret's feelings for Larry were far from normal. The detectives also found that Margaret had recently stopped taking her medication for schizophrenia because she felt the drugs gave her tardive dyskinesia, a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary, repetitive movements, often resulting from long-term use of certain antipsychotic medications. The police interviewed Lauren again, this time asking about her mother. Lauren admitted that Margaret had always been very controlling and a little off. Margaret's mental health issues made her behavior unpredictable. Lauren was shocked to learn about the letters and the extent of her mother's obsession with Larry. Forensic experts analyzed the letters and confirmed they were written by Margaret. The police also looked into Margaret's medical records and found she had stopped taking her medication about a month before Larry's murder. This information suggested that Margaret's mental state might have played a role in the crime. The discovery of the letters was a turning point in the case. It provided the detectives with a new motive and a deeper understanding of the dynamics within the Harrison household. The investigation was far from over, but the police were getting closer to uncovering the truth about who killed Larry Harrison. The detectives now had a new prime suspect. Margaret's obsession with Larry, combined with her mental health issues, made her a likely candidate for the murder. However, they needed more evidence to make an arrest. As the investigation continued, the police turned their attention back to Margaret Smith, Larry's 64-year-old mother-in-law. Margaret lived with the Harrison family and had a history of mental health issues, including schizophrenia. She was taking medication that caused tardive dyskinesia, a condition that made her movements erratic. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Margaret in for a more thorough interrogation on February 12, 2015. Margaret was initially calm, but became defensive when asked about the sexually explicit letters she had written to Larry. She admitted to writing the letters, but claimed they were harmless expressions of her feelings. The detectives questioned Margaret about her relationship with Larry. She described him as a kind and caring man, but her obsession with him was clear. Margaret believed Larry was the reincarnation of her late husband, Edgar. This belief had driven her to write the letters and behave in a controlling manner toward her daughter, Lauren. Margaret's mental health issues were a significant factor in the investigation. The detectives learned that she had stopped taking her medication about a month before Larry's murder. This information suggested that Margaret's mental state might have played a role in the crime. The detectives also asked Margaret about her movements on the night of the murder. She claimed she was in her room with old episodes of gunsmoke and didn't hear anything unusual. However, her inconsistent responses and the disturbing content of the letters made the detectives suspicious. Forensic experts analyzed the knife used in the murder and found traces of Margaret's fingerprints. This evidence, combined with the letters and her erratic behavior, made her a strong suspect. The detectives also found that Margaret had a motive: her sexual obsession for Larry and her desire to keep control over Lauren and her grandson. Margaret's reactions during the interrogation ranged from calm to agitated. She insisted that she loved Larry and would never hurt him, but her responses were often confusing and contradictory. The detectives noted her unstable behavior and continued to press her for details. The investigation revealed that Margaret's mental health issues and obsession with Larry had created a dangerous situation. The combination of her stopping her medication and her irrational beliefs about Larry pointed to a possible motive for the murder. As the police gathered more evidence, they realized they needed to consider all angles. Margaret's mental state and her history of erratic behavior were crucial pieces of the puzzle. The detectives knew they had to be thorough in their investigation to ensure they uncovered the truth behind Larry Harrison's tragic death. On Valentine's Day 2015, the Rochester police made a breakthrough in the case. After collecting and analyzing all the evidence, they identified Margaret Smith, Larry's 64-year-old mother-in-law, as the murderer. Margaret, who lived with the Harrison family, had a long history of mental health issues. Her obsession with Larry and her deteriorating mental state had led to a tragic outcome. The police pieced together what happened on the night of the murder. Margaret had confronted Larry in the kitchen, cruelly demanding that he have sex with her. When Larry loudly refused, Margaret's obsession turned violent. She grabbed a kitchen knife and, in a fit of rage, stabbed Larry multiple times. The attack was frenzied, and Larry had tried to defend himself, but he couldn't escape. Detectives Gustafson and Brown, along with a team of officers, went to the Harrison home to arrest Margaret. It was early in the morning, around 6:00 a.m., when they arrived. Margaret was in her room, and when the police informed her of the charges, she initially appeared confused and then became hysterical. She kept screaming this Valentine's Day, "I give my heart to you, Larry," and claimed that Larry's death was an accident caused by her tardive dyskinesia, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The arrest shocked the entire Harrison family. Lauren and her son were devastated. They couldn't believe that Margaret, their mother and grandmother, could commit such a horrible act. The neighbors, who had always seen Margaret as a frail and eccentric old lady, were equally stunned. The community was in disbelief as news of the arrest spread. Lauren and her son struggled to come to terms with the revelation. They were torn between their grief for Larry and their disbelief about Margaret's actions. The arrest brought some closure to the case, but left the family in deep emotional turmoil. The police took Margaret into custody, and she was booked at the local jail. During the booking process, Margaret remained erratic and often incoherent. The police ensured that she received medical attention for her mental health issues, but her legal troubles were just beginning. The community, still reeling from Larry's murder, had mixed reactions. Some were relieved that the police had found the killer, while others were saddened by the tragic circumstances that led to the crime. The local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, covered the arrest extensively, adding to the public's shock and sorrow. The arrest of Margaret Smith marked a significant turning point in the investigation. The police had successfully identified and apprehended the murderer, but the road to justice was far from over. The next step would be the trial, where the full extent of Margaret's actions and the impact on the Harrison family would be revealed. Margaret Smith's trial began on April 20, 2016, at the Olmsted County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with members of the community, including Larry Harrison's family and friends. The trial attracted significant media attention, with local news outlets like the Rochester Post-Bulletin providing daily updates. The prosecutor, David Benedictus, 45, was known for his tough approach. He argued that Margaret's obsession with Larry and her decision to stop taking her medication led to the brutal murder. Benedictus presented the love letters as evidence of Margaret's unhealthy fixation and called on forensic experts to explain how the fingerprints on the knife matched Margaret's. Margaret's defense attorney, Linda Lou Green, 50, had a reputation for taking on challenging cases. She argued that Margaret's mental health issues and the side effects of her medication, including tardive dyskinesia, played a significant role in the incident. Green tried to convince the jury that the murder was not premeditated but a tragic accident. Throughout the trial, Larry's family was visibly emotional. Lauren Harrison and her son attended every day, struggling to process the loss of Larry and the betrayal by Margaret. The courtroom atmosphere was tense as each side presented its case. The jury deliberated for 2 days before reaching a verdict. On May 5, 2016, they found Margaret Smith guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, considering her mental health issues but also acknowledging the severity of her crime. The verdict brought a sense of closure but also a deep sadness for Larry's family. Lauren expressed relief that justice had been served but was heartbroken over the loss of her husband and the actions of her mother. The community had mixed reactions, with some feeling the sentence was fair while others thought it was too lenient or too harsh. Margaret's reaction to the verdict was one of shock. She maintained that she never meant to kill Larry and claimed the murder was an accident. Her erratic behavior continued, and she was transferred to a facility where she could receive mental health treatment while serving her sentence. The prosecution's argument was strong, highlighting Margaret's obsession and the premeditated nature of the murder. David Benedictus was praised for his thorough work in securing the conviction. On the other hand, Linda Lou Green's defense was seen as compassionate but ultimately unconvincing to the jury. The trial's conclusion marked the end of a painful chapter for the Harrison family. Friends and neighbors offered their support, trying to help Lauren and her son move forward. The verdict and sentencing were widely covered by the media, bringing attention to the complexities of mental health in criminal cases. The impact of Larry Harrison's murder and the trial of Margaret Smith would be felt in Rochester for years to come. The community, while relieved that justice was served, remained deeply affected by the tragic events that unfolded in February 2015. After Margaret Smith's trial and sentencing, life slowly began to return to a new normal for the Harrison family and those involved in the case. For Lauren Harrison and her son, the aftermath of Larry's murder was a difficult journey of grief and healing. They received support from friends, neighbors, and the community who rallied around them during this challenging time. Lauren decided to move out of the house where the tragic event occurred. With the help of close friends and local volunteers, she found a new home in a quieter neighborhood of Rochester. She wanted to create a fresh start for herself and her son, away from the painful memories of their old house. In the months following the trial, Lauren focused on rebuilding her life. She returned to work at the Mayo Clinic, where she received support from colleagues and patients alike. Lauren's strength and resilience inspired many in the community who admired her courage in the face of adversity. Larry's colleagues at the local Applebee's where he worked also honored his memory. They organized a memorial service in March 2015, inviting friends, customers, and community members to celebrate Larry's life. The event featured heartfelt speeches, music, and a slideshow of photos showcasing Larry's dedication to his work and his love for his family. Meanwhile, Margaret Smith began serving her sentence at a state correctional facility. She received ongoing mental health treatment to manage her condition and the effects of her medication. Despite her tepid attempts to ask forgiveness for what she did, Margaret eventually succumbed to COVID-19 in May of 2021 and was buried without a gravestone in the jailhouse cemetery. The Rochester community, though deeply affected by the events of February 2015, came together to support each other. Local organizations offered counseling services and support groups for those affected by violent crimes. The media continued to follow the aftermath of the case, highlighting the importance of mental health awareness and support for families dealing with loss. As time passed, Lauren Harrison and her son found ways to remember Larry's kindness and generosity. They visited his favorite places in Rochester and shared memories with friends and family. While the pain of losing Larry would always be with them, they focused on honoring his legacy and finding hope in the future. The impact of Larry Harrison's murder resonated throughout Rochester, reminding everyone of the fragility of life and the importance of community support. The Harrison family's journey through grief and healing served as a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of tragedy. Carol McMillan was a 48-year-old with big dreams and a loving family in Shaker Heights, Ohio. She was well known in the community for her friendly nature and warm smile. Carol was the kind of person who would always stop to chat with neighbors and was happy to lend a hand when needed. She was active in the local community, often volunteering at church events and organizing neighborhood barbecues. Carol's friendly nature made her well-liked by everyone she met. Carol lived in a charming, two-story home on a tree-lined street in Shaker Heights, a suburb of Cleveland known for its beautiful architecture and strong sense of community. Shaker Heights is often described as having a boho chic vibe, with its famously liberal politics, mix of old and new homes, local coffee shops, and vibrant art scene. Carol's home was filled with family photos, cozy furniture, and a kitchen that always smelled like freshly baked cookies. She loved cooking and was known for her famous chocolate chip cookies, which she often brought to work or shared with neighbors. Carol was married to Daniel McMillan, a man 16 years her junior. Despite the age difference, Carol and Daniel appeared to be a happy couple. Daniel worked for a health insurance company and was often busy with work, but the couple made time for each other. They had been married for 5 years and lived with Carol's daughter from a previous marriage, 19-year-old Sarah Levinsky McMillan. Sarah was a bright and ambitious college student studying pre-med and had dreams of becoming a doctor. Carol was proud of her daughter and supported her in every way she could. In the weeks leading up to her death, Carol was planning a family vacation to Orlando. She was excited about the trip and talked about it constantly. She had recently purchased a new suitcase and was filling it with summer clothes, sunscreen, and a new pair of sandals. Carol loved spending time with her family and couldn't wait for the getaway. But Carol's excitement would forever be cut short when, on the morning of April 17, 2019, she was found dead in her home. On the morning of April 17, 2019, Shaker Heights was just waking up. It was a cool, overcast day, typical of spring in Ohio. The neighborhood was quiet, with only a few early risers out walking their dogs or grabbing their morning coffee from Starbucks. Carol McMillan had always been an early bird, but that day something was wrong. At around 8:30 a.m., Sarah Levinsky McMillan, Carol's 19-year-old daughter, went downstairs to the kitchen. She found her mother lying on the floor, unresponsive. A can of Carol's favorite drink, and America's as well, Diet Pepsi, was spilled beside her, the sugary sweet liquid slowly seeping into the grate between the tiles. Panicked, Sarah screamed and immediately called 911, her hands shaking as she dialed. The dispatcher's voice tried to calm her down, but Sarah was too overwhelmed. She was crying and begging for someone to come quickly. When the paramedics arrived just minutes later, they found Sarah in shock, pacing back and forth in the living room. The house was eerily quiet except for the sound of the 911 call still echoing from Sarah's phone on the kitchen counter. The paramedics rushed to Carol's side, but it was too late. Carol was declared dead at the scene. Sarah couldn't believe what was happening. Just the day before, her mother had been excitedly talking about their upcoming vacation, picking out outfits and making plans. Now she was gone, and Sarah was left feeling lost and confused. As the paramedics worked, Sarah called her stepfather, Daniel McMillan, who was at work at the time. Daniel's reaction was hysterical. He immediately started wailing, almost screaming, as Sarah sobbed into the phone. He told her he would leave work right away, but he sounded almost insane with grief. The Shaker Heights Police Department was quick to respond to the scene at the McMillan residence. Detective Laura Robacek, who had been with the department for over 15 years, led the investigation. Robacek was known for her sharp eye and methodical approach. She had a reputation for solving even the most challenging cases. When she arrived at the scene on the morning of April 17, 2019, she immediately sensed something was off. The McMillan home was a typical, well-kept suburban house, with a neat lawn and flower bed starting to bloom with the first signs of spring. Inside, the house was clean and organized. The only sign of anything out of the ordinary was the sight of Carol McMillan's lifeless body on the kitchen floor. Next to her was a spilled can of Diet Pepsi, America's nostalgic drink favorite, its silky brown contents pooling around her. Detective Robacek and her team began their work by securing the crime scene. Yellow tape was quickly put up around the perimeter of the house, and officers were stationed at the entrance to keep onlookers and neighbors at a distance. The investigators carefully examined the kitchen. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be out of place. Carol's purse was on the counter, untouched, and the back door was locked from the inside. The team noticed that the can of Diet Pepsi was still relatively full, with only a small amount spilled on the floor. This caught Robacek's attention. She instructed the crime scene unit to collect the can as evidence, along with the remaining liquid. The team also took samples from the kitchen counter and floor to test for any unusual substances. They photographed the scene from every angle, documenting every detail. An autopsy was ordered to determine the exact cause of Carol's death. The paramedics on the scene had suspected a heart attack, but Robacek wasn't so sure. There was something about the way Carol was positioned, and the fact that she had been drinking her favorite soda, or pop as they call it in the Midwest, just moments before, that made Robacek suspicious. As the investigation continued, the detectives combed through the house for more clues. They searched Carol's personal belongings, looking for anything that might suggest foul play. Her phone was also taken as evidence, with the intention of checking her recent calls and messages. Detective Robacek knew this case would require careful examination. There was more, much more, to Carol's death than met the eye. With Carol McMillan's death under investigation, the police turned their attention to the people closest to her. The first person they questioned was her husband, Daniel McMillan. At 32 years old, Daniel was much younger than Carol. He worked for a health insurance company in Cleveland and had a reputation for being handsome, charming, and successful. He seemed to have everything: a stable job, a nice home, and a wonderful family. But as detectives began to dig deeper, they uncovered a different side of Daniel. Daniel had met Carol 6 years earlier when he was working as a junior analyst at the insurance company. Carol, a widow at the time, had been charmed by his youthful energy and confidence. They married a year later, and Daniel became a stepfather to Carol's daughter, Sarah, then 13. On the surface, their marriage seemed solid, but friends noticed that Daniel had become more distant from Carol in the past year. He spent longer hours at work, often coming home late or claiming he had to travel for business. During his first interview with the police, Daniel appeared calm, even cold. He expressed shock over Carol's death, but his emotions seemed muted. He told Detective Laura Robacek that he had been at work when it happened and had rushed home as soon as Sarah called him. When asked about his relationship with Carol, Daniel claimed that they had a good marriage, though he admitted they had grown apart over time. He insisted that he had nothing to do with her death and had no idea why anyone would want to harm her. However, as the interview continued, Detective Robacek's suspicions grew. Daniel was too composed, too controlled. When asked about Carol's plans, Daniel was vague, saying he was a feminist and didn't like to keep track of his wife's day-to-day activities. He also couldn't recall the last time they had a meaningful conversation or had sex together as a couple. Robacek found it odd that Daniel, who claimed to love his wife, seemed so disconnected from her life. The detectives also noticed inconsistencies in Daniel's statements. For instance, he mentioned that he knew about Carol's and America's favorite drink, Diet Pepsi, yet he couldn't explain why there was a half-empty can next to her body when she was found. He claimed Carol drank soda often but didn't seem to know much about her other habits or routines. As the police continued to question Daniel, they began to consider his potential motive. Could Daniel have wanted out of the marriage, or was there something else, something darker, driving him? The investigation into Daniel's life revealed that he had been keeping secrets. One of the most shocking was his sexual obsession with his stepdaughter, Sarah. This revelation gave the police a new angle to pursue. If Daniel was in love with Sarah, it could explain why he might want Carol out of the way. But proving that Daniel was involved in Carol's death would require much more evidence. Detective Robacek knew they had to be thorough, carefully piecing together the puzzle that was starting to form. The next person the police investigated was Sarah Levinsky McMillan, Carol's 19-year-old daughter from a previous marriage. Sarah was a bright and driven young woman who was well on her way to becoming a doctor. She was a pre-med student at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, where she had earned a scholarship for her academic excellence. Sarah was known for her kindness and dedication to her studies, often volunteering at local hospitals and tutoring fellow underprivileged students, a common pastime in Shaker Heights in her free time. Sarah had always looked up to her mother, seeing Carol as a role model of strength and compassion. The two were incredibly close, often spending weekends together shopping, watching movies, or just talking about life snuggled in bed together. Carol had been Sarah's biggest supporter, especially after the death of Sarah's biological father when she was just a child. The loss had forged an incredibly strong bond between mother and daughter, making Carol's sudden death all the more devastating for Sarah. When the police first approached Sarah, she was visibly distraught. The grief of losing her mother was compounded by the shock of finding her dead corpse. Sarah told the detectives that she had been studying for an upcoming biology exam when she decided to take a break and grab a snack. She went to the kitchen and found her mother on the floor, unresponsive, with a can of Diet Pepsi nearby. In a panic, Sarah called 911, hoping against hope that it wasn't too late. During the interview, Sarah was cooperative but deeply emotional. She described her mother's recent mood as happy and content, with no signs of stress or unhappiness. Sarah couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm Carol, describing her mother as someone who was loved by everyone who knew her. The police asked Sarah about her relationship with Daniel, her stepfather, and Sarah spoke highly of him, saying that he was, quote, a hottie and that she saw him as a supportive father figure. She was completely unaware of his secret sexual obsession with her, a fact that made the police even more concerned and somewhat suspicious. As detectives delved deeper into Sarah's life, they found nothing to suggest she had any involvement in her mother's death. Her alibi checked out. Sarah had been in her room, engrossed in her studies, at the time of the murder. Her social media activity showed a typical college student's life, with posts about school, friends, liberal political causes, and upcoming exams. There were no signs of any secret relationships or troubling behavior. However, the police were still suspicious of the dynamics within the McMillan household. They wondered if Sarah could have been an unknowing pawn in Daniel's plan. If Daniel's sexual obsession with Sarah was as intense as they suspected, it could mean that Sarah was in danger too. But for now, there was no evidence linking Sarah to the crime, leaving detectives to focus their attention elsewhere. The third person the police questioned was Jessica Miller, Carol's closest friend and confidant. Jessica, 45, was a real estate agent who had known Carol for over a decade. The two women had bonded over their shared experiences as working women in Shaker Heights and had become inseparable over the years. Jessica was often seen at Carol's home, helping with community events or just sharing a glass of wine in the evenings. To those who knew them, their friendship seemed unbreakable, a bond built on trust and mutual respect. However, the police soon discovered that Jessica had been keeping a significant secret. Despite her outward loyalty to Carol, Jessica had been having an affair with Daniel McMillan. This revelation came as a shock to everyone who knew the trio, especially given Jessica's deep friendship with Carol. According to Jessica, the affair began about a year before Carol's death. She claimed that it started innocently, with Daniel coming alone to one of Jessica's infamous naked hot tub parties. A few flirtatious comments, later things quickly escalated into a full-blown sexual relationship. Jessica admitted to feeling, quote, a little bleeping guilty about betraying her friend, but said she couldn't resist Daniel's, quote, smoking hot bod. When the police interviewed Jessica, she was nervous and defensive. She knew that her affair with Daniel placed her under suspicion, but she insisted that she had nothing to do with Carol's death. Jessica claimed that she was kind of saddened by Carol's passing and had even considered lowering the number of times she had sex per week with Daniel because of the guilt she felt. However, she also revealed that Daniel had recently told her he was in love with someone else and dumping, leaving her devastated. Jessica didn't know who the other woman was, but she suspected it might be someone younger, possibly Sarah. The detectives pressed Jessica for more details about her sexual relationship with Daniel and her whereabouts on the day of Carol's death. Jessica stated that she had been at a real estate showing in Cleveland Heights and had clients who could verify her alibi. The police followed up on this, confirming that Jessica was indeed with clients at the time of the murder. However, they couldn't ignore the possibility that Jessica might have been involved in some way, given her emotional turmoil and jealousy over Daniel's shifting affections. Despite her alibi, Jessica remained a person of interest in the investigation. Her affair with Daniel, coupled with her close relationship with Carol, made her a complicated figure in the case. The police had to consider whether Jessica's jealousy and heartbreak might have driven her to do something drastic. But without concrete evidence linking her to the crime, Jessica was left in a precarious position, caught between her guilt over the affair and her sorrow over losing her friend. On April 27, 2019, just after 9:00 a.m., the weather in Shaker Heights was cool and overcast, typical for an Ohio spring. As investigators continued to search for clues, they received a significant break in the case. A toxicology report came back from the lab, revealing that Carol McMillan's cause of death was cyanide poisoning. The lethal substance had been mixed into her can of Diet Pepsi, confirming that her death was not a natural occurrence but a deliberate act of murder. The revelation of cyanide as the murder weapon shocked the investigation team. Cyanide is a rare and deadly poison, often associated with high-profile cases and espionage. The detectives knew they were dealing with a premeditated crime. Someone had gone to great lengths to plan and execute Carol's murder. This new evidence shifted the focus of the investigation, giving the police a clearer direction. The detectives immediately revisited the crime scene, searching for any trace of the poison or how it might have been introduced into Carol's drink. They examined the Diet Pepsi can, the surrounding area in the kitchen, and any containers or objects that might have come into contact with the poison. Forensic experts were called in to analyze everything, from the remnants of the drink to the fingerprints on the can. While no direct trace of cyanide was found in the kitchen, the forensic team did find traces of the poison on the rim of the can, confirming that it had been deliberately laced with the deadly substance. The discovery raised more questions. Who had access to the poison, and how did they get it into Carol's drink without her noticing? The police began to dig into the backgrounds of all the suspects, searching for any history of chemical knowledge or access to dangerous substances. They also looked into recent purchases and online searches that might indicate someone had been researching or acquiring cyanide. The detectives knew that cyanide was not something easily obtained. Whoever had used it had likely done some serious planning. This new evidence also put pressure on the suspects. The police re-interviewed them, focusing on their knowledge of poisons and any suspicious behavior leading up to Carol's death. The detectives were determined to find out who had the means and motive to commit such a calculated crime. With the case now pointing definitively to murder, the investigation took on a new urgency as they closed in on the truth. On April 20, 2019, just before noon, the police made a breakthrough in the investigation that would lead them directly to the murderer. After carefully examining the evidence and re-interviewing the suspects, the detectives had begun to piece together a disturbing picture. All signs pointed to Daniel McMillan, Carol's husband, as the one responsible for her death. Daniel McMillan, 32, was a charming and successful man who worked at a health insurance company. Outwardly, he appeared to have it all: a stable job, a beautiful wife, and a picture-perfect life in the progressive utopia of Shaker Heights. However, beneath the surface, Daniel was a man driven by dark and twisted sexual desires. He had become obsessed sexually with Carol's daughter and his stepdaughter, Sarah Levinsky McMillan, from her previous marriage. Daniel had secretly harbored sexual feelings for Sarah, who was only 19 and completely unaware of his intentions. As his obsession grew, Daniel became increasingly distant from Carol, seeing her as an obstacle to his disturbing fantasy of starting a new life with Sarah as his bride. Detectives uncovered key evidence that tied Daniel to the crime. An analysis of his internet search history revealed that he had been researching cyanide for several months before Carol's death. He had searched for information on where to buy it, how to use it, and its effects on the human body. This damning evidence suggested that Daniel had carefully planned the murder, intending to use cyanide to get rid of Carol without leaving a trace. On the day of the murder, Daniel had taken advantage of Carol's daily routine. He knew that she loved Diet Pepsi and drank a can every day after work. According to the investigation, Daniel had spiked her can of Diet Pepsi with cyanide, knowing that she would drink it as soon as she got home. The poison worked quickly, causing Carol to collapse and die within minutes. Daniel's plan was to make it look like a sudden heart attack, but the toxicology report revealed the truth. The police confronted Daniel with the evidence they had gathered. At first, he tried to maintain his innocence, but as the detectives laid out the facts, his internet searches, his growing obsession with Sarah, and the traces of cyanide on the can, Daniel's facade began to crumble. Daniel's arrest shocked the Shaker Heights community. Carol's friends and neighbors were horrified to learn that the man they had once thought of as a devoted husband had committed such a heinous act. Sarah was devastated by the revelation, struggling to come to terms with the fact that the man she had considered a father figure had been secretly plotting against her mother. The trial of Daniel McMillan began on January 15, 2019, in Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court. The case drew significant media attention, with local news channels covering the proceedings extensively. Carol McMillan's murder had shocked the Shaker Heights community, and many people were eager to see justice served. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney James Leakey, 45, was known for his thorough and determined approach to criminal cases. Leakey presented a strong case against Daniel McMillan. He argued that Daniel had planned Carol's murder with premeditation, pointing to the evidence of cyanide found in Carol's Diet Pepsi and Daniel's extensive internet searches about the poison. Leakey described Daniel's actions as cold and calculated, emphasizing how Daniel's obsession with Sarah Levinsky McMillan drove him to commit the crime. On the other side, Daniel's defense attorney, Laura Phillips, 38, tried to paint a different picture. Phillips argued that Daniel was a man who had been overwhelmed by personal problems and stress, which might have affected his judgment. She claimed that Daniel's actions were not premeditated but a result of mental instability. Phillips tried to argue that there was not enough direct evidence linking Daniel to the poisoning, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. During the trial, Carol's family, including Sarah, attended each day, visibly emotional and distressed. Sarah was particularly affected by the trial, having to confront the reality of her stepfather's betrayal and her mother's death. The court saw tearful testimonies from friends and colleagues of Carol, who described her as a loving and caring person who would never have imagined such a violent end. After several days of testimony and evidence presentation, the jury deliberated and returned a verdict on January 22, 2019. Daniel McMillan was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Daniel to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was met with a mix of relief and sorrow by Carol's family and friends. They felt that while justice had been served, the pain of losing Carol and the betrayal by Daniel would linger. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the case, but it left a lasting impact on those involved. Carol's friends and family had to cope with the aftermath of the trial, trying to rebuild their lives while remembering the warmth and kindness Carol had brought into their lives. The trial was a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most seemingly perfect facades. After Daniel McMillan's trial and sentencing, life in Shaker Heights began to return to normal. But the impact of the case was still deeply felt by those involved. The McMillan family was forever changed, and the community was left grappling with the aftermath of the crime. Daniel McMillan was transferred to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, where he began serving his life sentence. His trial had been highly publicized, and he became a known figure in the prison system. His imprisonment was a stark contrast to the life of luxury he had once enjoyed. The media coverage of his case continued for some time, with many local news outlets reporting on his adjustment to prison life and his interactions with other inmates. Sarah Levinsky McMillan, Carol's daughter, faced a challenging road ahead. She was a pre-med student at the time of her mother's death and had been deeply affected by the murder. After the trial, Sarah took a leave from school to focus on her mental health and process the trauma of the past months. She received support from friends, family, and professional counselors. Her community rallied around her, and many people admired her resilience and strength during such a difficult time. Jessica Miller, Carol's former friend and Daniel's secret lover, also had to navigate the consequences of the case. Although she was cleared of any involvement in the murder, the affair and the role she played in Daniel's life made her a controversial figure. Jessica's real estate business suffered due to the negative publicity. She decided to move to a different city to start over, hoping to leave the past behind and rebuild her career and personal life. As time went on, Carol's friends and family worked to find a sense of normalcy. They focused on remembering her in positive ways and continuing the community work she had been passionate about. The case served as a harsh reminder of how quickly a life can be upended by betrayal and violence, leaving lasting scars on everyone involved. David Hale was a 41-year-old man who lived in Ardmore, Oklahoma, a small town known for its conservative values and tight-knit community. He owned a successful car dealership in town, Hale Auto Sales, which had been in his family for generations. He was a well-respected businessman, known for his honesty and integrity. David was also a deacon at the local Baptist church, where he was deeply involved in community events. On the outside, David seemed like the perfect family man, hardworking, kind, and committed to his wife, Anne, and their daughter, Macy. But beneath this clean-cut image, David carried a heavy secret. For years, he struggled with his sexuality, which was at odds with the traditional values of his town and his church. This inner turmoil led him to live a double life, often traveling to Oklahoma City and Dallas for anonymous sex with other men. While he was devoted to his family in many ways, David felt emotionally distant from them, especially as his marriage to Anne had grown cold and loveless. In the years before his death, he struggled to reconcile his true sexual feelings with the life he felt obligated to lead. One of those sexual relationships was with Hunter Davis, his daughter Macy's 18-year-old boyfriend. Hunter, a high school football star, had grown close to David after Macy introduced him to the family. On the surface, David acted as a mentor to Hunter, offering him guidance, helping him find work at the dealership, and even giving him financial support. But in reality, David was using this mentorship as a way to Hunter into a secret sexual relationship with him. David's double life began to catch up with him in the summer of 2021. His daughter, Macy, had just graduated from high school and was looking forward to starting classes at a local community college. She was excited about her future and was planning to marry Hunter that fall. David, meanwhile, was struggling to keep his affair hidden while managing the growing tension in his home. Macy, always close with her father, started to notice his strange behavior but was clueless to what was really going on. In the days leading up to his death, David seemed distracted, his mind clearly on more than just his business and family obligations. He spent more time than usual in private, often taking long drives late at night or shutting himself away in his home office. His double life was finally unraveling, leading to the fateful confrontation that would cost him his life. On the morning of August 14, 2021, at around 7:00 a.m., David Hale's body was found by his daughter, Macy, in the bathroom of their home. It was a Saturday, and like many small towns, Ardmore, Oklahoma was quiet. Macy had woken up early, planning to go out for breakfast at Denny's with her boyfriend Hunter. She knocked on her father's bathroom door but got no answer. When she opened it, she was met with a horrific sight. David was lying on the cold tile floor, a pool of blood surrounding him. The bathroom mirror was splattered, and the handgun that David kept for protection was lying on the floor next to his lifeless hand. Macy screamed, dropping her phone as she stood frozen in shock. After a few moments, she ran back to her room, grabbed her phone off the floor, and called 911. Macy's voice trembled as she spoke to the dispatcher, struggling to explain what had happened. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the last few days, trying to make sense of how her father, the man she had looked up to all her life, could now be dead. The dispatcher tried to calm her down, asking her to stay on the line until help arrived. Macy remained panicked, pacing back and forth between the bathroom and the living room, trying to catch her breath. Within minutes, the first responders arrived at the Hale residence, a modest ranch-style house on the outskirts of town. The paramedics quickly confirmed what Macy already knew. Her father was dead. As the reality set in, Macy collapsed onto the front porch, tears streaming down her face. Her world had been turned upside down in an instant. News of the tragedy spread quickly throughout Ardmore. In a town where gossip moved fast, especially in the age of Facebook and local news websites, word of David Hale's death shocked the entire community. Neighbors began gathering outside the Hale house, whispering and speculating about what could have happened to the man they knew as a kind and upstanding citizen. Macy was taken to the police station shortly after her father's body was found. Still in shock, she could barely process what was happening. Her mother, Anne, had been out of town visiting her sister in Tulsa and was on her way back, completely unaware of the nightmare awaiting her. By mid-morning, the small, quiet town of Ardmore was buzzing with confusion, fear, and rumors about what had led to the death of David Hale. The Ardmore Police Department arrived on the scene around 7:30 a.m. on August 14, 2021, less than 30 minutes after Macy Hale made the frantic 911 call. Lead investigator Detective Greg Marshall, a seasoned officer with over 15 years on the force, was known for his methodical approach to crime scenes. The bathroom where David Hale's body was found was small but recently renovated, with white walls and white tile flooring. It was a mess. Blood had pooled around David's head, and splatters covered the sink, mirror, and walls. The handgun, a Smith & Wesson .38, lay on the floor near David's right hand. It was clear that David had been shot at close range. The bullet had entered his chest, leaving no chance for survival. The detectives took in the details. The rest of the house was undisturbed. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, and nothing appeared to be stolen. It seemed unlikely that this was a robbery gone wrong, especially in a town like Ardmore, where violent crime was rare. Detective Marshall knelt next to the body, noting the position of the gun and David's hand. There was no indication of a struggle in the bathroom, but something about the scene felt off to him. He had another officer to dust for fingerprints on the gun and check for any other trace evidence in the room. He also requested a thorough examination of David's phone, which was sitting on the counter next to the sink. Marshall knew that in today's world, people's phones often held secrets, and he suspected David's would be no different. As the investigation continued, the police used luminol, a chemical agent, to check for any blood traces that might have been cleaned up elsewhere in the house. The only blood present was in the bathrooms, suggesting that David had been killed there and not moved after his death. Crime scene photographers documented every angle, making sure nothing was missed. By noon, the detectives had gathered all the evidence they could from the scene. The body was taken to the local coroner for a full autopsy, which would later confirm that David had died from a single gunshot wound to the chest. As Marshall wrapped up their initial investigation, it was clear they were dealing with more than just a simple accident or home invasion. Something much more personal had happened here. Macy Hale, David's 18-year-old daughter, was the first person the police questioned. Still in shock after finding her father's body, she was taken to the Ardmore Police Department later that morning. Detective Greg Marshall knew this would be a delicate interrogation. Macy was emotional, her face pale, and her hands trembling as she sat in the small, windowless interview room. Macy was fresh out of high school with plans to start community college in the fall. She was known around town for her outgoing personality and dedication to soccer, often seen at the local field in her Adidas gear. Her relationship with her father had always seemed strong, though in recent weeks, according to friends, Macy had been quieter and more withdrawn. Detective Marshall wanted to understand why. He started the interview gently, asking Macy about her relationship with her father. Macy described her dad as a hardworking man, always at the car dealership, but still making time for Sunday dinners and church. Her voice wavered as she recalled how their relationship had recently changed. Just days before the murder, Macy had discovered something shocking that shattered her world. She had found sexually explicit messages on her boyfriend Hunter's phone, revealing an affair between Hunter and her father. Macy's discovery had left her devastated, and the detectives could see the raw emotion on her face as she talked. She felt betrayed by both men and didn't know how to handle the situation. "I just wanted things to go back to normal," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want to believe what I saw." Marshall listened carefully. The motive for Macy to be involved in her father's death was clear: anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. However, as the interrogation continued, Macy insisted that despite her rage, she would never hurt her father. Her alibi was solid, too. On the night of the murder, she had spent most of the evening with Hunter, who she still loved despite his affair with her father, and several friends had seen them together at a local ice cream shop, Brahms, a popular spot in Ardmore. Surveillance footage from the store confirmed her presence there, giving her an airtight alibi for the time of the crime. Though Macy's emotional state and recent discovery pointed to her as a potential suspect, the detectives ultimately found no physical evidence linking her to the murder. Marshall, however, couldn't shake the feeling that this family's secrets ran much deeper than they appeared. Next on the police's list of suspects was Anne Hale, David's 39-year-old wife. Anne had been married to David for 20 years and was well known in Ardmore for her deep involvement in the church and the local community. As a stay-at-home mom, she spent much of her time organizing church events, leading Bible study groups, and volunteering at the local food pantry. Outwardly, Anne appeared to have the perfect life: a loving husband, a bright daughter, and a strong reputation in their conservative town. However, as the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered cracks in her seemingly perfect marriage. Friends and neighbors described the relationship between Anne and David as strained. Over the past few years, the two had grown distant, with David spending more time at his car dealership and Anne pouring herself into church activities. It was no secret that their loveless marriage lacked the intimacy it once had. Detective Greg Marshall brought Anne in for questioning 2 days after the murder. When she walked into the police station, she looked tired and grief-stricken, her eyes red from crying. Dressed in a simple floral dress, Anne clutched a tissue in her hand as she sat down across from the investigators. At first, Anne seemed cooperative, answering questions about her husband's routine in their marriage. She admitted that things hadn't been the same between them for a long time. "We were more like roommates than husband and wife," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't remember the last time he touched me." But when the detectives brought up the affair between David and Hunter, Anne's demeanor changed. She seemed shocked at the news, almost as if she couldn't believe it. As the interrogation continued, the detectives pressed her about her whereabouts the night of the murder. Anne claimed she had been out of town visiting her sister in Tulsa. It was on her way back, completely unaware of the nightmare awaiting her. Her story seemed plausible, but the police couldn't ignore the fact that Anne had a clear motive. The betrayal of both her husband and her daughter's boyfriend would be enough to push anyone over the edge. Anne's emotions were a mix of grief and anger during the interrogation. She maintained her innocence, but didn't deny that the revelation of the affair had deeply affected her. Still, like her daughter, Anne had no physical evidence linking her to the murder, and the detectives knew they needed more to definitively rule her out or confirm her involvement. On the morning of August 23, 2021, just 2 days after David Hale's murder, Ardmore detectives received a crucial break in the case. It was a humid, overcast day with temperatures in the low 90s, and the conservative town was still buzzing with spicy gossip about the crime. At around 10 a.m., Detective Greg Marshall got a call from the forensics lab. The teen had found a key piece of evidence that had been overlooked during the initial search of the Hale home. The gun used to kill David had traces of fingerprints on it, but they didn't belong to Anne or Macy. The detectives quickly returned to the Hale residence to re-examine the crime scene. The house had already been searched extensively, but this new development prompted another, more thorough inspection as they started retracing their steps through the house. The bathroom where David was found was still cordoned off, with unclean bloodstains still marking the spot where his body had been discovered. The gun, a Smith & Wesson revolver, had been carefully bagged as evidence, but now the forensic report gave them a new direction. The fingerprints on the gun matched Hunter Davis, Macy's boyfriend, who had been close to the family in many different ways for the past 2 years. This revelation raised immediate questions. Why were Hunter's prints on the gun? And what was his role in the murder? Detective Marshall recalled that during his brief initial interview, Hunter had seemed nervous but not overly suspicious. He had mentioned being with Macy at Braun's ice cream shop that evening, where several friends had confirmed his alibi. However, the prints on the gun painted a different picture, one that placed Hunter at the crime scene. The detectives knew they had to proceed carefully. They contacted Hunter and asked him to come in for a follow-up interview. Meanwhile, they began piecing together his connection to the Hale family. David had taken Hunter under his wing, offering him a job at the dealership and financial support in exchange for illicit sex. But the discovery of the affair had turned everything upside down. The new evidence gave the detectives more questions than answers, but it was clear that Hunter's involvement was deeper than they had initially thought. As the investigation progressed, the team felt they were getting closer to uncovering the truth. For the first time since the murder, they had a tangible lead that could break the case wide open. Hunter Davis, Macy Hale's 18-year-old boyfriend, quickly became the focus of the investigation after the discovery of his fingerprints on the gun that killed David Hale. Hunter, a well-known football star at Ardmore High School, had charmed most of the town with his athletic abilities and friendly demeanor. But behind that image was a troubled young man who had grown up in a difficult home environment. His mother struggled with drug addiction, and his father had long battled alcoholism. David Hale had stepped in as a parental figure, offering Hunter a summer job at his car dealership and even giving him a place to stay when things got rough at home. When Hunter arrived at the Ardmore Police Department for his second interview, the tension in the room was palpable. Detective Greg Marshall was ready to confront him with the new evidence. Hunter looked uneasy as he sat down, his hands fidgeting on the table. Wearing a faded Sooners t-shirt and jeans, he no longer carried the confident swagger he was known for on the football field. The detectives began by asking Hunter to walk them through the night of the murder again. He repeated his story. He had been with Macy at Brahms, grabbing burgers and shakes, but when confronted with the fingerprint evidence, his face went pale. He stammered, trying to explain how his prints could have ended up on the gun, and swore he didn't kill him. The detectives pressed him further, asking about his sexual relationship with David. Hunter hesitated before admitting that David had been more than just a mentor. He was his lover. Their relationship had turned into something so intense and passionate Hunter didn't know how to handle. He felt trapped, loyal to Macy, but manipulated by David, who had both helped him financially and used him for sex. "I didn't want any of this," Hunter said, his voice cracking. As the interrogation continued, Hunter's emotional state shifted from defensive to desperate. He denied any involvement in David's death, but seemed genuinely conflicted. He insisted that he loved Macy and wanted nothing to do with David anymore, but the detectives weren't convinced. His prints on the gun and his history with David were enough to keep him under suspicion. Though Hunter's responses were emotional and at times erratic, the detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence before they could determine his true role in David's murder. For now, Hunter remained one of the prime suspects, his relationship with the victim casting a long shadow over the investigation. On August 27, 2021, just before dawn, the Ardmore Police Department at last pieced together the tragic truth. After weeks of investigation and numerous interviews, they finally identified the murderer, Macy Hale, David's 18-year-old daughter. Macy had been the last person anyone expected to commit such a crime. To the outside world, she was a bright, driven young woman with a passion for soccer and plans for college. But beneath her calm exterior, she had been harboring an overwhelming storm of anger and betrayal. The investigation turned in Macy's direction when her mother, Ann Hale, provided police with a shocking detail. Macy had discovered sexually explicit messages between her father and her boyfriend, Hunter Davis, just days before the murder. This revelation gave Macy both the motive and the means to kill her father. The police immediately re-examined Macy's alibi. She had claimed she was at Brahms, a local fast food chain, with Hunter at the time of the murder. But surveillance footage from that night told a different story. The timestamp didn't match up with the timeline Macy had given during her initial interview. That, combined with forensic evidence linking her to the scene, sealed her fate. The night of August 27, police arrived at the Hale family home, where Macy was staying with her mother. The quiet Ardmore neighborhood, known for its conservative values, was suddenly buzzing with the sight of flashing lights and officers surrounding the house. Detective Greg Marshall, who had been leading the investigation, knocked on the door. Anne answered, visibly shaken, but Macy stood behind her, her face expressionless. "Macy Hale, you are under arrest for the murder of David Hale," Marshall said calmly as he read her rights. Macy showed no visible shock. Instead, she remained eerily calm, as if she had already accepted her fate. She complied with the arrest without resistance. As Macy was handcuffed and led to the police cruiser, Anne Hale collapsed onto the front porch, sobbing uncontrollably so much she even peed herself. The reality that her own daughter had killed her husband was too much to bear. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, whispering in disbelief at what had happened in their small, close-knit community. For the Hale family, life would never be the same again. The arrest brought some answers, but it left a trail of devastation in its wake. Macy Hale's trial began on August 31, 2022, in Ardmore, Oklahoma. The courtroom was packed with community members, reporters from local outlets like the Ardmore Daily, and members of the Hale family. The trial was a focal point of local news, given the shockwaves the murder had sent through this small, tight-knit town. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Michael Granger, argued that Macy Hale had acted out of anger and betrayal. Granger, known for his meticulous approach, presented evidence showing that Macy had discovered inappropriate messages between her father, David Hale, and her boyfriend, Hunter Davis. The prosecution claimed that this discovery had pushed Macy to murder her father in a fit of rage. The key evidence included the murder weapon, David's handgun, and Macy's fingerprints on it. Granger painted a picture of a young woman overwhelmed by jealousy and heartbreak, unable to control her emotions. Macy's defense attorney, Lula Ray McDonald, a 72-year-old veteran lawyer with a reputation for defending difficult cases, argued that Macy had acted in a moment of extreme emotional distress. McDonald pointed out that Macy had no prior criminal record and had been a loving daughter before discovering the affair. She claimed that Macy's actions were the result of a severe emotional breakdown rather than premeditated murder. McDonald asked the jury to consider Macy's age and mental state when making their decision. Throughout the trial, Macy's mother, Anne Hale, sat in the courtroom, her face a mask of grief and confusion. The emotional strain was visible on her face, and she often wiped tears from her eyes. Her reaction was one of devastation, reflecting the loss of both her husband and the relationship with her daughter. Macy herself appeared somber, rarely making eye contact with the audience or her mother. On September 10, 2022, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict was met with mixed reactions from the community. Some felt justice had been served, while others were saddened by the tragic outcome. The judge sentenced Macy to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. For the Hale family, the trial marked the end of a harrowing chapter. Macy's conviction brought a sense of closure, but it also left deep wounds in the family and the community. The tragic events had forever changed the lives of everyone involved. After Macy Hale's trial, the impact on those involved was profound. Ardmore, Oklahoma, a town known for its close-knit community and traditional values, had been shaken by the murder and the subsequent legal proceedings. Macy Hale, now serving a 25-year sentence at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center in McLeod, Oklahoma, faced a life drastically different from the one she had planned. Her time in prison was marked by isolation and regret. The once bright future she had envisioned, including her plans for college and a career, had been replaced by a harsh reality. Macy's story was widely covered in local media, including the Ardmore Daily and news stations like KXI-TV. The media coverage, while providing updates on her case, also served as a constant reminder of the tragic events and the lives changed forever. Anne Hale, David's widow, struggled to find normalcy in her life. She had to deal with the loss of her husband and the betrayal of her daughter. Anne, known for her involvement in local church activities and charity events, found solace in her faith. She continued to lead Bible study groups at the church, but did so with a heavy heart. The community rallied around her, offering support and condolences. Despite the support, Anne found it difficult to move past the betrayal and the fractured family relationships. Hunter Davis, Macy's former boyfriend, also faced significant challenges. After the murder, Hunter left Ardmore and went to live with relatives in a different state. His reputation as a high school football star was tarnished by his involvement in the scandal. Hunter attempted to rebuild his life away from the media spotlight, focusing on finding a job and starting over. However, the emotional scars from the affair and the murder remained with him, affecting his relationships and self-esteem. In summary, the lives of Macy Hale, Anne Hale, and Hunter Davis were forever altered by the murder. The community of Ardmore continued to deal with the emotional aftermath, trying to find healing in the wake of such a profound tragedy. The first victim was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old woman who had a remarkable life story. Born in Flint, Michigan, in 1920, Dana grew up in a working-class family during the Great Depression. She had a natural talent for nursing and enrolled in the Army Nurse Corps at the age of 18. She was deployed to Europe during World War II, where she witnessed the horrors of war firsthand. She was one of the few nurses who survived the Battle of the Bulge, the deadliest battle in American history. She received several medals for her bravery and service. After the war, Dana continued her nursing career and worked in various hospitals and clinics across the country. She married her high school sweetheart, Frank Carlile, and had 2 children, Mark and Lisa. She was a devoted mother and grandmother, and always had a smile on her face. She loved to read, knit, and watch her favorite show, The Golden Girls. She was also an avid fan of the Detroit Tigers and never missed a game. Dana moved to the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in 2003 after her husband passed away from a heart attack. She wanted to be closer to her daughter, Lisa, who lived in Tampa. She quickly made friends with the other residents and the staff, who admired her cheerful attitude and her compassion for others. She was a leader and a mentor, and often organized activities and events for the nursing home. She had a dream of creating a safe and loving community for the elderly where they could enjoy their golden years with respect and dignity. But Dana's dream would be shattered one July day. Another elderly victim who had trusted their life to the staff of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home located in a quiet suburb of Pinellas Park. Someone had a sinister plan to end their lives, and the motive would be shocking. It was a scorching day in July of 2004 when a gruesome discovery was made at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida. The nursing home was a peaceful and comfortable place for the elderly, surrounded by palm trees and flowers. But on that day, a dark shadow fell over the facility as one of its residents was found murdered in her room. The victim was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old woman who had lived a remarkable life. She was a war hero, a nurse, a mother, and a friend to many. She had moved to the nursing home a year ago after losing her husband of 60 years. She had adjusted well to her new home and was loved by the staff and the other residents. She was always cheerful, kind, and helpful, and had a zest for life that was contagious. But someone had snuffed out that life in a brutal and senseless way. There were no signs of forced entry, robbery, or sexual assault. It seemed like a random and motiveless crime that left everyone baffled and terrified. The person who found Dana's body was Robert J. Murkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. Robert and Dana had become close friends after meeting at a bingo night. They shared a lot of interests and hobbies such as reading, gardening, and watching reruns of Matlock and Happy Days. They often had dinner together and chatted for hours. But his was shattered when he went to visit Dana in her room that morning. He knocked on her door, but there was no answer. He opened the door and saw her lying on her bed, motionless. He thought she was sleeping and gently called her name. But when he got closer, he realized she was not breathing. He touched her face and felt how cold she was. He screamed and ran to get help. The staff arrived soon after and confirmed that Dana was dead. Robert was in shock and could not stop crying. He told the staff everything he knew about Dana and how much he cared for her. He had no idea who would want to hurt her or why. He was heartbroken and felt guilty for not being able to protect her. But Robert was not the only one who was grieving. The entire nursing home was in mourning and in fear. Dana was the first victim, but not the last. More residents would be killed in the next 2 weeks. The killer was still at large and had a twisted agenda. Who was behind these murders, and what was their motive? The answer would shock everyone and expose a web of lies, greed, and revenge. Within minutes of the discovery of Dana Carlile's body, the police were on the scene at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida. The nursing home was a modern and spacious facility with a capacity of 120 residents. It had a reputation of providing quality care and comfort for the elderly, but on that day, it became the site of a horrific crime that would shock the community. The lead investigators of the case were Detective Jackson and Detective Rokeby, two seasoned and respected detectives from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. They had worked together for over a decade and had solved many high-profile cases, such as the infamous Clearwater serial killer, who had terrorized the city in 2002. They were known for their professionalism, dedication, and intuition. They arrived at the nursing home and were greeted by the staff and the residents, who were visibly shaken and distraught. They were escorted to Dana's room, where they found her lying on her bed, covered with a white sheet. They lifted the sheet and saw her pale and lifeless face. She looked peaceful, as if she had died in her sleep. But the detectives knew better. They noticed a small puncture mark on her arm and a syringe on the floor. They also found a bottle of pain pills on her nightstand with a prescription label that read, Dana Carlile, OxyContin, 10 milligrams. Take one every 4 hours as needed for pain. The detectives quickly realized that Dana had been killed by an overdose of pain pills, a method that was unusual and suspicious. They wondered who had access to her medication and why they would want to harm her. They also wondered if there were any other victims, or if Dana was targeted for a specific reason. They had a lot of questions and few answers. They decided to interview the staff and the residents, and to review the security footage and the records of the nursing home. They hoped to find some clues and to catch the killer before they struck again. But they were too late. Dana was the first victim, but not the last. The killer was still on the loose and had a sinister plan. The investigation of the murder of Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old resident of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, took a shocking turn when the police identified the first suspect. He was Robert J. Murkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. He was not only Dana's friend, but also her secret lover. Their affair had started in 2001 when they were both married to other people. They had kept their relationship hidden from their spouses, their families, and their friends. Robert's wife, Helen, had died in 2002 after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. She had been living in a different nursing home, where Robert had visited her every week. He had felt guilty for cheating on her, but he could not resist his feelings for Dana. He had hoped to start a new life with her after Helen's death. But Dana's husband, Frank, had outlived Helen by a year. He had suffered a heart attack in 2003 and had passed away in his sleep. He had been a loving and faithful husband to Dana, and a proud father and grandfather to their children and grandchildren. He had been unaware of Dana's affair and had trusted her completely. Dana had moved to the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in 2003 after Frank's death. She had wanted to be closer to her daughter, Lisa, who lived in Tampa. She had also wanted to be with Robert, who had moved there a few months earlier. They had finally been free to be together, without any secrets or lies. They had been happy and had enjoyed their time at the nursing home. They had also been sexually intimate many times and had expressed their love for each other. But their happiness was short-lived. On July 15, 2004, Dana was found dead in her room, killed by an overdose of pain pills. The police arrived at the scene and questioned Robert as a witness. He had been the one who had discovered her body and had called for help. He had claimed that he had gone to see her that morning, as he usually did, and had found her unresponsive. He had said that he had been shocked and saddened by her death, and that he had no idea who would want to harm her. But the police were not convinced by his story. They had noticed some inconsistencies and contradictions in his statements. They had also found some evidence that linked him to the crime. They had found his fingerprints on the syringe and the bottle of pain pills that had been used to kill Dana. They had also found a note in his room that read, "I'm sorry, Dana. I love you, but I can't live without you. Forgive me." They accused him of killing Dana out of jealousy or desperation. They speculated that he had feared that she would leave him, or that he had wanted to end their suffering. They interrogated him for hours, trying to get confession or a motive. But Robert remained calm and composed, and denied any involvement in the murder. He said that he loved Dana and that he would never hurt her. He said that the note was a suicide note that he had written a long time ago but had never acted on. He said that the fingerprints were a coincidence and that he had no access to the pain pills. He said that he was innocent and that someone else had killed Dana. But who and why? The police had no other suspects or leads. Was Robert really the killer, or was he a scapegoat? Was this a crime of passion or a cover-up? Was there more to this case than met the eye? The answer would shock everyone and reveal a dark and twisted plot that involved corruption, conspiracy, and revenge. The murder of Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old resident of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, was a shocking and tragic event. But it was only the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt the nursing home for weeks. The killer was not done yet and had a list of targets. The next victim was Robert J. Murkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. He was not only Dana's friend, but also her secret lover. Robert was under suspicion for Dana's murder, but he maintained his innocence. He said that he loved Dana and that he would never hurt her. He said that someone else had killed her and framed him. He said that he had no motive, no access, and no evidence. He said that he was a scapegoat and that the real killer was still on the loose. But the police did not believe him. They thought that he had killed Dana out of jealousy or desperation. They thought that he had feared that she would leave him or that he had wanted to end her suffering. To them, he was the killer, and they had caught him. But they were wrong. Robert was not the killer, but the next victim. He was found dead in his bed, also overdosed on pain pills, just 2 days after his arrest. His death confirmed the suspicions of the detectives. It was clear that these deaths were not suicides, but cold-blooded murders. The investigation took a sinister turn as the police realized that they were dealing with a serial killer within the nursing home. A serial killer who had a list of targets and a twisted agenda. A serial killer who was not done yet and who had identity that would shock everyone. The breakthrough in the investigation of the murders of Dana Carlile and Robert J. Murkowski, 2 residents of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, came on a stormy night when the police searched the nursing home for clues. They stumbled upon a hidden stash of secret recordings that revealed a dark and disturbing truth. The recordings were made by Carly Burgley, a 38-year-old single mother of 3 who worked as an aide at the nursing home. She had a secret hobby that involved recording the intimate and sexual moments of the residents without their consent or knowledge. She had installed hidden cameras and microphones in their rooms and had captured their most private and personal moments, including sex. She had then sold these recordings online, mainly to Japan, where there was a high demand for sexual material involving the elderly. She had made an estimated $15,000 from this illegal and immoral activity and had no remorse or guilt. But her scheme had backfired when she had recorded Dana and Robert. She had not known that they were lovers and had been surprised by their affair. She had also been afraid that they had discovered her secret and had threatened to expose her. She had panicked and had decided to kill them before they could ruin her. She had used her access to their medication and had injected them with a lethal dose of pain pills. She had then planted the evidence to make it look like Robert had killed Dana, and then himself. She had thought that she had gotten away with it and had continued her explicit recordings. But she had not counted on the police who had found her stash and had traced it back to her. They had exposed her as the killer and as the mastermind behind a sick and twisted business. In the midst of the investigation into the chilling series of murders at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home, a breakthrough occurred. The focus shifted to Carly Burgley, a 38-year-old single mother of 3 and an aide at the nursing home. As the police interrogated her, a complex and troubled past began to unravel. Carly's story was one of desperation and a relentless desire to provide for her family. It was revealed that she had a history of drug addiction, a battle she fought fiercely while trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. However, her involvement in the production and distribution of sexually explicit recordings added a sinister layer to her already troubled life. During the interrogation, Carly's emotions were palpable. Anger, fear, and regret danced across her face as she struggled to maintain composure. The weight of her actions bore down on her, and she knew that the consequences would be severe. The detectives pressed her for answers, seeking to unravel the truth hidden beneath her troubled exterior. The investigation took a dark turn as the police delved further into Carly's life. They discovered a web of connections, linking her to a network of individuals involved in the production and distribution of secret sexually explicit materials, specifically of the elderly. It was a world shrouded in secrecy, operating under the radar of law enforcement. As the media caught wind of the case, news blared with sensationalism. The local newspaper, the Pinellas Park Gazette, dedicated coverage to the shocking revelations, captivating the community. As the investigation continued, the detectives meticulously pieced together the puzzle, uncovering the truth behind the series of murders. The case would go down in history as one of the most shocking and disturbing crimes to rock Pinellas Park. After months of investigation, the police finally cracked the case of the nursing home murders. The killer was none other than Carly Burgley, a 38-year-old aide who worked at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home. She was arrested on July 29, 2004, and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Carly Burgley had a dark secret that she was desperate to hide. She was involved in a lucrative but illegal business of making and selling sexually explicit recordings of the elderly residents to Japan. She used hidden cameras and microphones to capture the intimate moments of the unsuspecting victims. The first of her targets was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old former nurse who served in World War II. Dana was a beloved figure at the nursing home, known for her kindness and compassion. She had a secret romance with Robert J. Murkowski, a 91-year-old widower. Carly Burgley saw them as an opportunity to make more money and recorded their sexual encounters. However, Carly's scheme was almost discovered by Dana. Carly panicked and decided to silence Dana by overdosing her on pain pills. She staged the scene to look like a suicide and hoped to escape suspicion. But Robert, who found Dana's body, was heartbroken and suspicious. He told the police that Dana would never kill herself and that he suspected foul play. Carly realized that Robert was a loose end and decided to eliminate him as well. She used the same method of overdosing him on pain pills and made it look like another suicide. But the police were not convinced. They noticed the similarities between the 2 deaths and launched a thorough investigation. They found traces of Carly's fingerprints and DNA on the pill bottles and the victims' bodies. They also discovered her hidden stash of recordings and traced her connection to a Japanese website, karaishasexy.jp. The police arrested Carly Burgley and had charged her with 2 counts of first-degree murder and several counts of invasion of privacy, extortion, and fraud. They had also seized her recordings and had contacted the authorities in Japan to track down the buyers. She claimed that she was driven by financial desperation and that she loved her family. She said that she regretted her actions and asked for forgiveness. But the police and the victims' families were not moved by her words. They said that she was a cold-blooded killer who preyed on the vulnerable and betrayed their trust. The courtroom drama unfolded as the trial of Carly Burgley, the accused murderer of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home killings, reached its climax. The prosecution, led by the relentless prosecutor, Jane Carolborg, presented a compelling case against Burgley. With attention to detail, Carolborg painted a vivid picture of the events that unfolded in the sweltering summer of July 2004. The trial, held in the Pinellas Park Courthouse, drew significant local media attention. Journalists from local newspapers, such as the Pinellas Tribune, were eager to report on the sensational case. The families of the victims, Dana Carlile and Robert J. Murkowski, sat anxiously in the gallery, hoping for justice to be served. The prosecution's case relied heavily on forensic evidence and eyewitness testimonies. Expert witnesses, including renowned medical examiner Dr. Samantha Collins, testified about the cause of death and the presence of pain pills in the victims' bodies. The prosecution also presented phone records and surveillance footage from the nursing home, which placed Burgley at the scene of the crimes. Defense attorney Janelle Lavrov, known for his fierce advocacy, fought tirelessly to protect his client's rights. Lavrov argued that the evidence against Burgley was circumstantial and lacked a direct link to the murders. He questioned the credibility of the witnesses and raised doubts about the motives attributed to Burgley. Finally, after careful deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: The judge, Honorable Paul Thompson, announced that Carly Burgley was found guilty on multiple counts of murder. Gasps filled the courtroom as the families of the victims embraced each other, finding solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. As Burgley was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, the media frenzy intensified. News outlets across Tampa Bay reported on the trial, dissecting the evidence and analyzing the motives behind the killings. The case became a cautionary tale, highlighting the need for increased security measures in nursing homes and the potential dangers of hidden secrets. In the aftermath of the trial, the lives of all those involved were forever changed. The shocking series of murders that took place at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, in July of 2004 left a lasting impact on the community and beyond. Journalists from across the Tampa area flocked to Pinellas Park, eager to report on the sensational details of the trial. The local newspaper, the Pinellas Park Gazette, dedicated coverage to the trial with headlines like "Justice Served," "Burgley Convicted of Murder," and "The Burgley Trial. A Community's Healing Begins." The impact of these horrific crimes extended beyond the courtroom. The Raleigh Meadows nursing home, once a place of care and comfort, became infamous in the community. The residents and their families were left questioning the safety and security of nursing homes across the country. The tragedy prompted a conversation about the need for stricter regulations and oversight in elder care facilities. In response to the murders, the Raleigh Meadows nursing home implemented a series of security measures to prevent future tragedies. The facility installed state-of-the-art surveillance cameras, increased staff training on recognizing signs of abuse or neglect, and implemented stricter visitor policies. These changes aim to restore trust within the community and ensure the safety and well-being of the residents. As the years passed, the wounds inflicted by these heinous crimes slowly began to heal. The victims' families found solace in knowing that justice had been served, while the community rallied together to support one another through the difficult process of healing. The memory of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home murders remains a somber reminder of the need for vigilance and compassion in caring for our elderly population. In this episode of True Crime Case Files, we delved into the chilling series of murders that struck the Raleigh Meadows nursing home. The lives of Dana Carlile and Robert J. Murkowski were tragically cut short by Carly Burgley, a single mother driven by desperation and a dark secret. As we reflect on this harrowing tale, let us remember the victims and the resilience of those who survived. Stay tuned for more gripping true crime stories on True Crime Case Files.